2 years ago, my screen time was over 5 hours a day. Then I stopped scrolling on TikTok and it went to 30 minutes a day. With those extra hours, I started doing martial arts, and since then I've had 3 kickboxing fights. In this video, I'm gonna walk you through my step-by-step framework to stop scrolling on TikTok as a teenager. Step 1, the primal reset. So when I was younger, I was always a long-form consumer. I liked consuming content on YouTube. I binge watched a fuck ton of entertainment content. But then in 2020, when I was 13 years old, I got introduced to the TikTok app and I started using it a fuck ton. I got addicted pretty quickly and I started scrolling for hours every single day, and it replaced my long form content consumption. But then in 2022 and 2023, I saw a bunch of guys pop off with this masculine gym culture sort of discipline kind of mindset online, and their message really resonated with me. So I was like, yeah, let me get more productive. I discovered the concept of self-improvement, of being productive and not wasting time. So I realized that I had to stop scrolling on TikTok because it was wasting my time. I knew this intrinsically, but I used to tell myself that it was kind of productive because I was learning some stuff about this new sort of culture that I was getting into. I saw all these clips from these big male influencers, and it was stimulating how to scroll for hours a day still. But deep inside, I knew that I had to stop, right? I knew that I was just wasting my time, that it was entertainment, not education, that I wasn't really learning anything. Because the thing with TikTok is you might learn something from an inspirational little TikTok, right? But in order to get to that TikTok, you have to scroll through 10 other ones on the main feed, and all of them are brain rot. You don't gain anything from them. And even if they feel sort of inspirational, chances are you're not actually going to learn anything from them. You're just going to get a little hit of pleasure, of basically procrastination and mental masturbation. So I realized this shit, and I realized that I had to stop. And so I tried just willpowering my way through it. I tried to just quit it cold turkey, or whatever the fuck you call it. Because the thing was, I had built up some discipline in my life. I had started going to the gym. I'd started taking cold showers like fucking every morning, like a soldier waking up at 6 a.m., just rushing into the cold shower. And I'd also picked up some side hustle work. In fact, I was actually using the TikTok platform a little bit to market some affiliate marketing products, if you know what that is. But basically, I had built up some discipline in other areas of my life, and I was like, let me just use that discipline in this area and try to just quit it that way. But it didn't really work, and the reason was, for 80% of my day, I would be like pretty disciplined, right? I would be pretty locked in. But then for like 20% of my day, like 2 3 hours of my day or something like that, I would just fall into these mini ruts, these micro ruts. For example, I'd come home from school at 4 p.m. and I'd just be tired, I'd be lethargic, I'd be sluggish, I'd be I'd be stressed for the exam tomorrow, some shit like that. I'd be a bit anxious because I was anxious for, like, for example, if my parents found out about my shit grade or some shit like that, right? And so I would just grab my phone with some food, get comfortable, get cozy on the couch, and I'd start scrolling for 2 3 hours. And the thing was, like, that shit frustrated me because I was super disciplined throughout the entirety of the rest of the day. But then when 6 p.m. rolled around and I was supposed to go to the gym, I didn't really have an energy to do it, and I just kind of ended up procrastinating it because when you fucking scroll like that for 3 hours or 2 hours or some shit, it depletes you, it drains your energy, right? At least that's what it was for me. And so I realized that, like, it wouldn't just work for me to just try to willpower my way through the stuff. I couldn't just do it cold turkey. Like, it something just didn't click for me. Like, it was super annoying because I was like, one part of my identity was this disciplined kind of guy, but then the other half of me would be this fucking undisciplined, lazy motherfucker that I would tap into for a solid few hours every single day, or most days, right? And so I had this division within me, and it is super annoying when you have an internal division, when you don't have internal unity, when you are like, when everything inside of your mind, inside you, aren't on the same side. Like, how the fuck are you supposed to conquer and, like, achieve stuff in life and take on enemies if you're not united within, right? And I realized that at the time, and like, I knew the dangers of TikTok. I knew that it was bad for me. I knew that I was wasting my time, but still, I wasn't able to quit it, and it was super frustrating for me. The thing was, even if I did manage to come home after school at 4 p.m., go to the gym immediately, and not end up scrolling, and then, let's say, I come home and eat dinner, and then 7 p.m., 8 p.m. rolls around. But then I'm like, I'm still like, I get fall into these mini ruts so frequently. It's so fucking annoying. And so I started doing research online about this stuff, about addiction, about willpower, about the TikTok platform in general. And one of the key big takeaways that I heard from that I got from my guy on YouTube was that when are trying to stop scrolling on TikTok, that is not actually the problem in and of itself that we should be trying to solve. That is actually just the symptom of the real problem, which is poor mental health. And it kind of clicked with me because I was like, yeah, like if I just don't get into these lethargic mini ruts, these sort of low energy states, if I just stop getting into these fucking depleted, drained, lethargic, sluggish, bored, tired, anxious states for a few hours of the day, like these pockets of time, that I would just stop scrolling automatically because throughout the rest of the day, I just wasn't the kind of guy who did that, right? I'd delete the app, but then I'd re-download it because I'd make some excuses for myself, I'd cope, and this sort of mindset really clicked with me that we shouldn't actually be trying to willpower our way through it, like through quitting TikTok. We should be focusing on the other stuff. And so I also learned about how the TikTok platform worked and how this related, like how the TikTok platform and the things that they do related to this sort of philosophy. And one of the key main things is something called dopamine. So the reason that we get into these mini ruts, these little fucking, pockets of time when we feel a lot more depleted and drained is because of something called dopamine. And dopamine is a molecule in our brain. So you can kind of imagine dopamine as a little chemical in your brain that gives you motivation. So when your brain produces dopamine, you get motivation for whatever's in front of you. And so a lot of people think dopamine is pleasure, and it's actually not. It is motivation. Like, I don't have to go into this like fucking scientific research. Like I don't have to explain that shit in this video. But basically, dopamine gives you motivation, and when you lack dopamine, when you fuck up your dopamine receptors, when you expend all your dopamine, what happens is that what you lack motivation because you lack dopamine. And so in these sort of states, like when I was tired and lethargic, as opposed to me being energetic in the morning, for example, I was hopping into the cold shower, I was working out, right? Was dopamine. I was like my energy levels were just drained. I became less driven. And the thing with dopamine, with TikTok specifically, is that when you scroll on TikTok, you spike your dopamine. How? When you scroll, you get a sort of little pleasure thing. Like you get a feeling of social connection, of something that you might learn. And then, because of the fact that it's so easy to keep going, the only thing you have to do is scroll, is swipe once, right? The only thing that you have to do is like a mindless fucking brain dead action. It requires zero risk, zero pain, zero time delay, nothing like that, right? Zero effort. And so your brain starts creating an association between this reward that you get from the TikToks and scrolling, right? Or it between the reward and the TikToks. And so it spikes up your dopamine receptors, your motivation to keep doing the thing because your brain wants you to keep doing the thing that is rewarding, right? And so when we scroll, we get a lot of dopamine. We spike our dopamine, it goes through the roof. But then what happens with dopamine is kind of like with steroids. If you've been into the bodybuilding, you might have heard that when people take steroids, their natural testosterone levels go down. And the reason is that their body thinks that, well, we've already got plenty of this, right? We got so much testosterone because you injected artificially, right? You injected, and then your body's like, we don't need more of this stuff. We already got loads of it. We can stop producing naturally, and that's kind of how it is with dopamine as well. You spike your dopamine levels, and then what? Your brain stops producing as much normally. And then here's the key point: when you stop doing the activity that gives you the dopamine spike, your dopamine levels plummet. They go down below the original baseline. That's what creates these sort of low energy, lethargic states. And the more you do that on a consistent basis over a long enough period, like that's really what depression is. I don't really believe in depression as a chemical disease or anything like that. But when people talk about lack of hope and shit like that, right? With depression, that like dopamine is the answer. Their dopamine levels are also fucked, that they don't have any motivation, any drive. And the thing is, dopamine is not just motivation for the activity. Like it's not just that you scroll on TikTok and then you don't have any motivation to do the hard work like studying or building a business or going to the gym, so you procrastinate on it. It's not just that you lack motivation for the activity, it's also that you lack motivation for the outcome. Like think about what I just said. When you fuck up your dopamine levels, you lack motivation for the outcome. Like, do you get what I mean by that? Like, it's kind of like the light at the end of the tunnel being extinguished. Like, we're on this path of self-improvement, of discipline, of masculinity, and we're pursuing all these great endeavors. We're trying to better ourselves, right? And we're going through all this hardship. Why? To get, or it's a sort of philosophical question, but in general, we go through all this hardship to achieve something, to get something at the end of the tunnel. We go through this darkness, this dark tunnel, and then at the end of it, the light will come. But what happens when you fuck up your dopamine receptors is that the light at the end of the tunnel is extinguished. It goes away. Why? Because like, your motivation for the thing, the ultimate reward, goes down, which is so insidious, and that's what creates depression. That's what creates all these like uh, lethargic states that we get into. And so I realized dopamine was the key issue, and if we dopamine and mental health are like, they're very, very linked, right? So if we improve our dopamine levels, we improve our mental health automatically. That's kind of how it is. Because when you scroll on TikTok, you just mindlessly grab your phone, right? You want to go into something called escapism. Because of the fact that your dopamine levels are so low, you sort of have like, you want this quick, easy reward. You have your dopamine levels are so low, you get all these emotions of boredom, lack of energy, anxiety, stress, regret, guilt, shame, these kinds of things, right? You don't want to experience that, or your brain doesn't want to experience that. So if it can use a tool to avoid that extremely easily without any effort, it'll search for that thing. So it'll compel you to pick up your phone and start scrolling when you get into these low energy, lethargic, dopamine depleted states. And that's what's called escapism. You want to escape from your normal reality and distract yourself with some bullshit fucking entertainment content, right? That's what happens. And the really fucked up part is that when you go into escapism and you go and scroll on TikTok, you fuck up your dopamine levels even more. And what happens then? You want to go into escapism even more. So it's this vicious cycle, it's this vicious flywheel, right? And it's so insidious, and that's what keeps you scrolling on TikTok for extended periods of time. You fall into this fucking this dark tunnel or whatever the fuck, right? And you want to keep staying in escapism, and it reinforces your brain to keep scrolling, and that's what's so insidious. And that's why I fucking hate the TikTok app and basically all social media apps, but the TikTok app in particular, because it's so like pushed towards short form content, and it's fucked up so many people, including my younger self. And so I realized that like we have to eliminate the need to go into escapism. We have to stop screwing up our dopamine levels. And so one very, very interesting thing that I learned about around this time about this stuff is something called the emotional frequency graph, or the emotional frequency spectrum. So basically what the emotional frequency graph is like a ladder of like a bunch of steps stacked on top of each other, like like a ladder basically, of the emotions that you can feel, the full range of emotions. And when we get into these lethargic mini ruts, when we gonna want to go into escapism, we're low on the emotional frequency graph. We want to like, we have these feelings of anxiety, of regret, of boredom, of tiredness, of lethargy, of guilt, of shame, of that kind of stuff, right? So what we want to do is climb the emotional frequency graph. Why? Because then we will get into these better, positive, more natural, healthy states like enlightenment, joy, fulfillment, self-respect, love, even emotions like these, right? And so if we do that on a consistent basis and we make sure that we stay in that state, we will stop getting into these mini ruts. At least that's what I thought at the time. That was my hypothesis. And so I realized that if I just was able to climb the emotional frequency graph, I would stop scrolling pretty much automatically, because the version of me that wasn't like that was at that point, because I was at that point like 80% of the day, the version of me that was at that point throughout the entire day would not scroll on TikTok. I would not mindlessly grab my phone. And so basically that was how I thought about it. Because the thing is, I realized that this whole cycle, this addiction, is actually like a formula that we can spell out. So the we have an output, we have a behavior that we want to get rid of, which is scrolling on TikTok. And so if you want to get rid of an output, if you want to change an output, how do you do it? You change the input, right? And so the thing that creates the output is the process. So the input goes into the process, which creates the output. And so the process in this context is our mind and our mental health, the emotional frequency graph, how the way that we think, how we feel on a regular basis. The thing that we have to do to fix that shit, like, are the inputs, right? We have to input different things into the process so that it will create different outputs, right? And so I realized that we shouldn't be thinking about scrolling on TikTok as the thing that we actually should be focusing on. We should be focusing on the input which creates the desired output, which is that we don't scroll on TikTok. And so I was like, how do we actually do this practically? How do we actually climb the emotional frequency graph? What are the inputs that we need to input into the process to create the output? And I was like, well, there are probably some things that humans have done since the dawn of human time, that we have always done, that are evergreen, that we have, like, through evolution, through everything, that we have stuck to. And those things have to be the things that are the most healthy for us. Why? Because they have proven themselves to be that, like, be healthy through the test of time, right? Like, all the modern day bullshit, right? We have only had this for a couple of hundred years, or even like a few decades. So we don't know if it's actually good for our bodies, right? We don't actually know if it's good for our minds. But if we can do the things that humans have always done, have always been good for us, that will be, beneficial for our mental health and our ability to climb the emotional frequency graph. So I was like, if I could just implement some of the things that my primal ancestors used to do, my fucking caveman brothers, right, with a 5 times testosterone levels of the modern people, right, then I would climb the emotional frequency graph. Why? Because if I do the things that they did, obviously in a civilized manner, applied to the modern world and the modern society, but if I just did that, it would probably feel natural to me. Like, I always like being out in nature. I really felt connected to nature and things like that. I was like, yeah, that would probably be very beneficial for me in this context of improving mental health and climbing the emotional frequency graph. And so if we can just live more like our primal ancestors, we will climb the emotional frequency graph and we will stop scrolling on TikTok. And that is the primal reset. You reset your fucked up brain that's been through the conditioning of the modern world to what's actually natural and healthy for humans. And then that will automatically create the output of not scrolling on TikTok, because you'll have no need to do that. You won't want to go into escapism. Your dopamine levels will not be fried. And so that was how I thought about it, and I started implementing that philosophy into my life, and it greatly, I stopped scrolling pretty much effortlessly, pretty much automatically. It wasn't this full-time job that I had to constantly govern and just be afraid that I would mindlessly pick up my phone like that, right? It wasn't like that. It was an effortless, sort of seamless, automatic transition, which is probably what you want as well. And this is the way to do it. And by the way, I'm actually currently making a massive program where I cover the primal reset and all the other steps to stop scrolling on TikTok as a teenager and get back hours of your fucking life every day, right? It's called NoScroll Protocol, and it's on a pre-sale right now. So if you want to, you can lock in like a 50% discount while I'm making it. It'll be linked in the description. You can have a look if you want to. Step 2, the primal habits. So what are the actual habits, the actual things we should be doing to live more like our primal caveman ancestors and climb the emotional frequency graph? There's two parts to this. The first one is to remove all the unnatural habits from our lives, and then the second part is to replace them with good, normal, healthy habits. So let's start with the first one, removing the unhealthy, bad habits. So the things that are in your environment, that are in your life, in your daily schedule, that are spiking your dopamine levels, things like junk food, pornography, movies, video games, shows, alcohol, drugs. If you're doing any of these things, it will be a lot harder to quit scrolling TikTok if you keep having them in your life. So basically, what I want you to do is that I want you to analyze your life, analyze your situation, and see what are the low hanging fruits that you can pick from this bucket, right? Let's say you like having a little snack when you come home from school in the afternoon, right? Some sugary treat that your mom buys, for example. If you keep having that shit, it'll be a lot harder for you to stop scrolling on TikTok. Why? Because you spike your dopamine because it's sort of pleasurable, and therefore it'll be easier to, or harder to stop scrolling on TikTok because your dopamine levels are so low, and the only thing that will be stimulating enough are these modern habits, right? So if you have any low hanging fruit in your life, like you fap to pornography like once a week or some shit like that, you eat junk food every now and then, you watch a movie every week or some shit like that, right? If you can just remove all these little other micro fucking habits from your life, let's say you play some video games as well, you might play some video games in class, in school, or some shit like that. I used to play chess online in school, actually, which is obviously a lot less degenerate than other video games. It's not really a video game, but still, it's very dopaminergic when you're playing these fast games of chess online. It's kind of like like you have your score, your rank, your sort of like you climb, you have your rating, and stuff. So it was pretty addictive that as well. But if you can just remove some of these unnatural things that are stimulating you, that are overstimulating you rather, it'll be a lot easier to quit TikTok. Why? Because you slow this flywheel of dopamine and overstimulation and lack of desire down. You slow it down, and it'll be a lot easier to quit TikTok that way. And so I want you to look at your life, see what the low-hanging fruits are. Which things could you just kind of effortlessly stop doing? Which things could you just stop if you just decided that you would stop having that little treat in the afternoon and that one fapping session or some shit like that, or that little bit of video game. If you could just remove that, it'll be a lot easier. And so I want you to analyze your life and decide which ones you're going to stop doing. And so now let's get into the specifics of what actual habits I implemented to have this sort of transformation and stop scrolling on TikTok. Let's begin. So, number one, the caveman diet. So, imagine a tribe of cavemen, right? What are they eating? Really visualize it to yourself. Like, what are they actually eating? Are they eating bread? Are they eating sugar? Are they eating snacks? Are they eating candy? No. Are they eating McDonald's? Fuck no. What are they eating? They're eating natural foods like meat, eggs, berries, nuts, maybe some vegetables, fruit, that kind of stuff, right? And so why aren't you eating like that? Diet is a huge part of our mental cognition. Like, if you think about it, what are the fundamental parts that influence humans in general? Like, of course, there you need air, you need water, but outside of that, like the next biggest thing is food. So it'll have a huge impact on your mental cognition and everything. And let me tell you why. There's something called the vagus nerve. Like, you might be wondering, why the fuck would really like what I have in my stomach impact my brain that much? Well, I'll tell you why. There's something called the vagus nerve in your body, the vagus nerve, and it's a huge motor, like a highway of nerves of signals in your body that goes from your stomach, from your gut to your brain, and it communicates. And it's kind of like you have an internet connection and a phone. Your phone is your brain, and your gut, your stomach is the internet connection, and then the vagus nerve is the wire between them. If you have a shit internet connection, you'll be like the phone will basically be useless, right? And it's the same thing with diet. If you like, you are what you eat. You will think about what you eat, or rather, let me put it like this: if you eat like shit, what do you think you're gonna be and think? Like, you're gonna think like shit, and you're gonna be shit, basically, right? So, fill in the blank, man. So, diet has a huge impact on us. And I was like when I first realized this, it was in 2024, end of 2023 maybe. I had my little side hustles. I had my boxing that I was doing, my weightlifting, that kind of stuff, self improvement grind. And so I heard about a concept online called intermittent fasting, and it's this concept that we shouldn't even be eating breakfast. That we should just wake up and wait 6 hours or some shit like that before we have our first meal. Basically, just skip breakfast and have lunch. And I'd always eaten around the clock, right? I'd always had breakfast, lunch, dinner, normal. Especially when in late 2022, when I started going to the gym and I wanted to build muscle and get protein into my system. I wanted it around the clock. But then I learned about intermittent fasting, and I was like, fuck it, let me try it. I'm gonna wake up and work on my side hustle tomorrow. And I tried it, and my brain was sharp as fuck. My mind was clear. I wasn't getting all these bullshit thoughts that just pop up and this sort of heaviness in my brain. It wasn't like that. But then in the afternoon, after I'd had lunch, I was back to this sort of more lethargic carb crash sort of state. Like, you've probably heard about carb crashes before, right? And it's this idea that when we are eating a bunch of food, like a bunch of carbohydrates, pasta, rice, that kind of stuff, it will negatively impact our cognition. Why? Because it gives us something called brain fog. You probably experienced this. Like, it's just you're trying to do the work, you're trying to study, you're trying to work on your business, but it's just like it just doesn't come, right? It's just hard. You can't really think as you can at other times. You just want to lay down and sort of be comfortable, right? That's brain fog, and a lot of that is actually derived from the foods that we eat and how often we eat. And so if you think about it, the more of that you get, the harder it's going to be to or not get into these sort of mini ruts, right? You can probably imagine the more of this brain fog and mental sort of just mental fog that you get, the mental mist in your mind, right? The more of it you get, the harder it'll be for you to resist TikTok. Why? Because your mental cognition, your self-control, your willpower, all of it is sapped, right? At least that's what I realized. And so I was like, how did cavemen eat? Well, they ate natural whole foods, meat, eggs, nuts, fucking maybe some milk, something like that. These normal, healthy, human foods, right? Not some bullshit like, bro. If you go to McDonald's and order a cheeseburger and put it on your desk, it'll stay like that for a month, right? Like if you put a fucking chocolate bar on your desk, nothing will happen to it. And why is that fucked up? Well, like if you put normal food, real food on your desk for a month, like a piece of steak, for example, what do you think will happen to the steak? It'll rot, it'll mold, it'll be covered in bugs and fucking flies. And why is that? Because it is natural. You're not supposed to be able to have food just lie out in the open for that long. Why that is, I'm not really sure, like the actual science of it, right? But that is how it is. And so if you put McDonald's on your fucking table, nothing will happen to it, which is a testament to how much of a fucking poison it is. Like it's not real food, it's fake food. It's not. It shouldn't be legally, like you shouldn't be able to eat that shit on a regular basis because it, like, number one, it's just so unhealthy for your gut in general, but also it'll give you all this brain fog, all this lethargic feelings, right? So I want you to stop eating processed garbage food. So if you eat that, stop fucking immediately. It's so destructive, right? That's kind of a level one of this stuff. And then level two is something that I realized about carbohydrates in specifically. Like you can eat, for example, pasta, rice, oats, bread, these kinds of things that aren't necessarily like they're not junk foods, right? Rice isn't fucking junk food. Like fried foods, candy, soda, snacks, these are junk foods. Like rice and oats, they're not junk foods, right? But here's the key point, right? Carbohydrates are still a lot worse for your mental cognition, your mental energy than meat and eggs and like protein and fat based food. So let me tell you why. It takes a lot more energy to digest carbohydrates than it does to digest pretty much anything else. That's why, like, that's what from where the food coma thing comes from. If you eat a big steak, you don't go into a food coma, at least not as much, right? You still probably will get some level of brain fog, but it'll be like 20%. At least that's how it is for me. And so carbohydrates, like, bro, just imagine you eating a big bowl of pasta. How the fuck are you gonna like focus after that? Are you more likely to start scrolling on TikTok, just mindlessly grabbing your phone after a big bowl of pasta, big bowl of rice, or some shit like that, or after 10 eggs, for example, or a steak? It's gonna be the pasta, it's gonna be the rice, it's gonna be the carbohydrates. They're a lot more taxing on your body, and it takes a lot more energy to digest them than anything else. And so carbs, like, this might sound a bit fucking like crazy to you because all the doctors of the modern world, the fat piece of shit doctors that are like taking bribes from companies and shit, they've convinced the modern world that we should be eating grains, that we should be eating breads all the time. But I'm telling you, bro, you're a lot more stupid when you eat bread than when you eat meat. That's just how it is. Like, if you were a fucking colonizer, you wanted to colonize a country, like bro, if you had a bunch of slaves, let's just have this hypothetical example. If you wanted your slaves to be as mentally inept and slow as possible, because that's what TikTok wants. TikTok wants you to be as mentally fucking fatigued and inept as possible. Why? Because you'll stay on the platform longer. And so imagine if you were in their shoes. If you had a bunch of slaves that you had just colonized, right? I actually heard this analogy from a guy on YouTube, Hamza Ahmed, great guy. If you are colonizing a fucking country and you have a bunch of slaves, this is what the British did to the Indians, by the way. The British man, the white man, came over to India, and he fucking pillaged the land, raped all the women, impregnated them, and enslaved all the Indian men, right? And basically, what happened was that they didn't want the slaves to be eating meat and all these sort of high testosterone, high mental cognition foods, because then they would be a lot mentally sharper and they'd be more likely to rise up against their colonizers. And so, what do you think they gave them? They gave them bread, vegetables, grains, all these bullshit foods. Like I remember a couple of like a half year ago, a couple of months ago, I was quite a bit into like chess. Actually, I wanted to learn it more, stuff like that. Not in like a addictive way necessarily, like I mentioned earlier, but I just want to I like chess and I still do, but I've taken a back step from it. And one of the interesting things was that one of the big chess channels on YouTube is called Chess Base India, and like the main guy that's running that shit, he's like he told me that he was vegetarian, or not me, he through a video, right? He said that he was vegetarian. And I was like, fuck, of course he is, right? All the Indians, they're what are they eating? Naan bread, vegetables, like basically all of India, as I understand it, are fucking vegetarians, and that is because like the fucking white man came and colonized the country a couple of centuries ago, and basically bastardized and manipulate their holy books like the Buddhism, Hinduism, and stuff like that. So all of this to say is that when you eat a lot of carbohydrates, a lot of sort of sugary foods, a lot of processed foods, these low testosterone slave foods, you're going to be a lot less mentally sharp, and it's going to be a lot worse for your body. And so you'll be a lot more prone to getting into these mini ruts and start scrolling on TikTok. Like if you're a real man, have a real man food. Have eggs and steak and fish and maybe nuts, things like these that make you stronger, right? Avocados, halloumi, maybe some fruit, right? Not these like bread. Like what? There's no nutrients in bread or anything like that. And I know you're probably a bit skeptical to this stuff. Why? Because you most likely been conditioned by the modern world, by your parents, by the education system, by the fucking just the programming of the news and everything that you should be eating carbohydrates because you need energy from them. The thing is, bro, carbohydrates they kind of take more energy from you than you gain, at least in a cognitive and mental sort of function. Like if sure, if you're training for 3 4 hours a day like a pro athlete, like I did before my kickboxing fights, I trained for like 2 hours a day, right? Of course I'm gonna have carbohydrates, but that's because I actually use them. I'm doing high intensity training for 2 hours a day, right? And so sure, if you're training like a pro athlete, sure, have a lot of carbohydrates. I'm not denying that. But if you don't, and you want to actually quit scrolling TikTok for good, if you can, get onto what's called the keto diet or the paleo diet, which is when you reduce your carbohydrate intake drastically, right? So you eat things like meat, eggs. I think fruits are a lot better than breads, so feel free to have them as well. But those are the things that work for me. Right now, I'm on a carnivore diet. I only eat meat and eggs, 10 eggs a day and a kilogram of meat. That's all I eat, and I feel sharper than ever. I have like the best willpower, the best mindfulness of my life. And diet is actually like it's such a huge thing, bro. We should be like it's crazy that this stuff has been perpetrated upon mankind, that we should be eating all these bullshit foods that make us slower and lethargic and all this, like give us all these symptoms of basically depression. You're basically bored and tired and like not lonely, but you're bored and tired and sluggish and mentally fatigued all the time. And it's so destructive, man. So it's like it's bro, if you imagine what the caveman ate, they didn't fucking have bread. Like we only had bread for like I think we started making bread like 9,000, 5,000 years ago, something like that, the agricultural revolution. But even 5,000 years, bro, it's not that much. We've had meat for millions of years. It is so hardwired in our bodies. Like fatty meat is the only foods that we can actually survive on. It is a lot more natural for us than bread. Right? We can survive on like we cannot survive on just bread. We can survive on only meat. And the reason is that we get a lot of nutrients and vitamins through the grass that the cow or the whatever from wherever we get the meat has eaten, right? So it's kind of stored in the fat of the animal. And so you can actually survive on only meat, and it's the only kind of food that you can survive on by only eating that. So all this to say, start removing carbohydrates from your meals and replacing them with more protein, with more eggs, steak, fish, nuts as well. Fruit is acceptable, like berries, things like these, right? That we've always eaten, that we've eaten for hundreds of thousands of years. We've only eaten bread for a couple of thousand years, which is a lot. Like it's a lot less in comparison, right? So that's what I want you to do. And then also the second thing with diet that I want to add is the meal frequency, how often you eat. So with this intermittent fasting thing, I realized that like even if we eat only meat, we follow this sort of high quality caveman diet, right? We're still gonna be more lethargic if we have food every 3 hours, for example, like a bodybuilder. If you're into bodybuilding a lot and you're in that culture and you wanna like maximize gains, I can understand that, right? But if you want to quit TikTok, the best thing is going to be to have like one or two big meals a day. That's what I have right now, and that's what I've had for a long time. Like OMAD, one meal a day is what I follow now. I followed 2 meals a day for a long time. Couple of 1 2 years, like past 2 1 to 2 years ago, I did that. But with OMAD specifically, like you're digesting foods for so much less, like for such a little period of the day in comparison to when you're eating every 3 hours. And for me at least, this been true for me. Like my mental cognition is absolutely on fire. It's better than ever, and like just fucking try it for a couple of days. Don't be a little bitch trying to like argue against this stuff when you haven't even tried this yourself. Like you do not get to fucking have an opinion about this stuff if you not tried it on yourself. Like if you haven't tried this diet for that long, you don't get to have an opinion about this. Why? Because you don't have any context. As Hormozy said, you don't have a perspective from which to make a judgment, right? So if you've never done this and you have your little gay opinion that's basically been given to you by the modern world, right? Shut the fuck up and try, right? I'm being intentionally abrasive here because I want to help you, right? I'm not trying to be mean. You can tell, right? I want you to try this diet and see for yourself. If it doesn't work for you, fine. Say, Leo, I've tried this stuff. It doesn't fucking help me. I just feel hungry all the time if I only eat once a day. But if you haven't tried it, fucking try it and then give me your opinion, right? So I want you to try eating less carbs, less frequent meals. Maybe 2 meals a day is good, right? And I want you to see how you feel and see how your mental cognition is and how often, or rather how much less you get into these mini ruts and start scrolling on TikTok. And so what I'll do is that I'll create a document with my favorite primal healthy meals, and I'll leave a link to it in the description. You can check that out if you want to for free. So the next habit is what I call ancestral sleep. So if you think about a tribe of cavemen, how did they sleep? Because sleep is going to be a hugely like a fundamental factor on how we think and how if we get into these mini ruts or not, right? So if you think about it, how did cavemen sleep? Well, they probably followed the sun, right? They saw the sun rise, they saw the sun set, and their circadian rhythm, the sort of times that they went to bed and woke up, was linked to that, right? And so, what would that mean? That would mean that they went to bed and woke up at basically the same time every single day. They would have insane regularity. Obviously, the sun, like throughout the year, the times the sun rises will change, obviously, but in general, they will just follow the sun, and they will have extremely regular sleep. And so, one of the things that has been hugely impactful for me when it comes to sleep and mental cognition is actually to prioritize regularity over volume. So you might have heard that you should have 8 hours or 9 hours or 7 hours of sleep, whatever, right? In my opinion, it's actually more important with regularity, because if you think about it, the cavemen would probably not have like a full 8 or 9 hours of sleep throughout the entire year. They will probably have like 7 hours or 6 hours during the summer or some shit like that when the sun is up more, right? So I actually think that at least for me, I made my own experiments and got my own results, right? And so for me, with sleep, I feel a lot better when I'm just regular with my sleep. And for the last couple of weeks specifically, I've been the most regular that I've ever been. Like I've been in bed within a 15-minute window. 15 minute. Like if you go to bed at, let's say your bedtime is 10 p.m. If you go to bed at 11 p.m. Once a week, that's not terribly like that's not very unreasonable, right? But it actually is, at least from what I understand it, what it feels for me, it's actually very destructive for your sleep. It's a lot better to get half an hour less of sleep every single day, but keep it very very regular, than to fuck it, like go to bed at 2 hours earlier, 2 hours later, that kind of stuff, right? And the modern world has basically convinced us that weekends are a thing and that we should be having weekends, that we should be going to bed and staying up later on the weekends and to rest out or some shit. But it doesn't work like that. Your caveman brain, your caveman body doesn't give a fuck about weekends. It doesn't believe in it. Like weekends are barely 100 years old, right? It doesn't point to your human capacity or your human needs. Like weekends aren't a thing, right? So when I started when I started having sleep regularity like never before, my mental cognition got a lot better, and so that will obviously help me in resisting TikTok. And then also what the caveman did that you can probably imagine was that they woke up pretty early. Like if you wake up when the sun rises every single day, then you're probably gonna be waking up between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m. depending on the year, right? But then also we can look at the things that they did once they woke up. So if you can imagine caveman tribe, what did they do the first thing that after they woke up? They hunted, right? They went out to hunt at dawn. That's what all animals do. That's what lions do. fucking wolves, all the big predators of the world, including caveman humans, we went out and hunted immediately, right? And so the hunt for us today could be whatever. It could be, for example, working on your side hustle, studying, taking a cold shower, right? To get this sort of first win of the day that builds the positive momentum for the rest of the day. Like you want to get your biggest, hardest tasks of your day done as quickly as possible. Why? Because then you'll build positive momentum and you'll be able to ride that for the rest of the day, and it'll just feel a lot better, right? Like for example, right now it is 5:55 a.m. So you can probably imagine the time that I woke up or got out here to record this video, for example. And so when I started regularly waking up early in the morning and getting these sort of first wins, like building the momentum, that was when I really felt that my sleep was really like giving me all these positive impacts on my mental clarity and my ability to resist TikTok. Because the thing is, if you wake up late on a weekend and you just grab your phone and stay in your cozy, comfortable little bed, right? Like that's not ideal at all. Obviously, you want to get up early like a fucking Spartan, like a warrior, and get the fuck out of bed immediately, collect your first win, and get going, right? That makes sense, right? And so that's what we want to be doing with our sleep to stop scrolling on TikTok. Now, the third habit is outdoors activities. So things like being out in nature, getting sunlight, being a bit playful, climbing trees, jumping over puddles, finding big sticks that you can run around with like a fucking kid. Imagine the cavemen, right? They were out in nature all of the time, literally all of the time, barefoot as well, right? So that's going to be one of the most natural, best, healthy habits for us. And I've always known this intrinsically from when I was like 2 years old and I watched the movie The Jungle Book for the first time. I've always loved nature and wildlife and adventures and things like that, right? And like it's so spiritually enhancing, really. Like when you're out in nature, you're connecting to new sort of echelons of spirituality. It hits the spot, right? If you're not into nature regularly, you're fucking missing out, right? And chances are you probably don't get a lot of sunlight either, right? You stay inside all day on your fucking crusty computer chair, scrolling away, or in bed, or you're in school inside of these fucking concrete walls or some shit like that. Or if you're even a bit older and if you have a fucking 9 to 5, that's the same thing. You stay inside all day, you wake up, and then you commute on the public transport, right? And then you get to your little master's place. You go out to the to the schools or the workplace. You stay there, and then you come home, and then you spend the majority of the time after school as well, or after work inside. So you don't get sunlight at all basically. Because the thing is, if you think about it, how much sunlight didn't our fucking ancestors get? They got so much, like insane amounts, like 100 times more than we do right now. Like they spent all day outdoors, just walking around, fucking being out in the sun, playing with like, bro. If you can just remember when you were a kid and you were out in nature, for example, with your friends or something like that, with school, for example, you were climbing trees, you were having fun. You were never depressed during those times. You were never like you were never wanted to go into escapism. Like if you could just tap more into that sort of emotional frequency, like that is what we're trying to get you to, right? That's what we're trying to get you to. And the thing is, we're not actually supposed to stop doing that. We're not actually supposed to stop being in this sort of playful, sort of happy, blissful mood. We're not supposed to stop doing that just because we become adults. Just because the fucking matrix or the whatever the fuck the system is trying to make you a semi-depressed little slave, really, to these platforms like TikTok, and you're scrolling like this with this facial expression for hours, right? Just because the modern world has tried to convince you that that shit is normal and that it is cringe to be out in nature, climb trees, do things like this, fucking jump or even run across puddles like a little kid, right? Muddy your shoes. It doesn't mean that is not like that doesn't mean that it's correct. Doesn't mean that it's healthy at all. In fact, it kind of indicates the opposite, right? Like when the fuck was the last time you were out in nature? You really think about it, right? And how much have you been out in nature? How much sunlight have you gotten in the past couple of months, for example? Probably significantly less than what your body is actually wired and developed for, right? Because our caveman ancestors, they were out in nature 24 fucking 7, right? So I'm not saying that you have to be out in nature 24/7, obviously, but a daily walk in nature like I have, I work out in the outdoors gym, for example, just a few minutes from here, right? In this forest area. It's super natural for you. It's super healthy. It'll put your brain in this high emotional frequency state. It's like It's the best thing, man. So get the fuck out into nature. And now the fourth habit, primal exercise. So if you think about it, how did our ancestors exercise? Well, they walked around. They walked around in the forest and they got fucking 30,000 steps a day or some shit like that. They walked around for 6, 8 hours a day. Like, what the fuck else was there to do, right? They literally had to run and hunt all day, fucking sit and watch the boars as they ran by and try to sneak up on them or some shit like that, right? They were exercising all day. They were getting a lot of it, right? And I'm not saying that you have to be doing high intensity like martial arts, for example, exercise for 8 hours a day. Obviously not. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I did when I was in my sort of martial arts season. But I want you to keep in mind like how many steps you're getting every single day, because the thing is, walking is not difficult at all, but it is super healthy, and it is going to improve your mental health and your mental cognition and your emotional frequency state a lot. Like, bro, if you can just go out into nature and go for walks for a couple hours a day or like 1 hour a day, that'll do wonders for you, I promise. How do I know this? Because I do it every single day, and I have done, like, I have been out in nature so much for the past couple of years, right? And so exercise, not necessarily for the sort of gains in the gym or just like the martial arts trophy or whatever, but simply for the health benefits of being outside and maybe running or walking, whatever you prefer, or even biking perhaps. That's going to be supremely helpful and healthy for you, because that's exactly what our primal ancestors did for the majority of the day. So that's going to be another thing. And then also, if you want to make it more fun and more engaging, you can add some sort of progression element to it. And with walking specifically, and hiking and doing these kinds of things, being outside, you can have, for example, that you want to get a high score in your step count or in your heart rate variability or these stats like resting heart rate, for example. And it'll be a lot more fun that way. It's the same thing with all other sports, really, with weightlifting and with martial arts. With martial arts, you're in a competition, you're winning trophies, you're leveling up your skills. It's kind of like a video game in a sense. The same with weightlifting, you're leveling up your bench press from 0 kg or 20 kg, the empty barbell, to 60, 100, 140, whatever. And that gamifies it, and it makes it more fun and more enjoyable, and you're more likely to stick to it. So if you can do that with the exercise that you're doing, it's going to be a lot more sustainable, and you're actually going to want to do it because it's going to be addicting in and of itself, which is super good. Like, if we can be addicted to positive healthy habits, these habits, right, that's super, like, that's wonderful, obviously. So that's the thing with exercise. Habit number 5, tribal socialization. So if you think about it, how did our caveman ancestors socialize, right? Just imagine it. Well, they were probably in a big tribe, in a big clan, and they were doing a lot of stuff with each other, or not in that way, right? Sound a bit sus, but basically they would spend a lot of their time with the other, like, people of their tribe, and the activities that they would do throughout the day they would do with others, right? So for example, they might hunt with others, they might go out and forage for berries and nuts with their tribe mates. They might, for example, sit in front of the campfire in the evening when the sun sets, and just talk with each other around the campfire. Things like that, right? They might feast together. They might have fucked, like, you know, they're gonna be doing stuff in cooperation, like with each other, right? And so obviously, if you can mimic that in your life, it's going to be very healthy, and it's going to be super good for your mental health and for your sort of emotional frequency graph. Like, if you're lonely all of the time, you're going to be a lot more prone to scrolling on TikTok, obviously, right? And so if we can find our people, the people that we really resonate with, that we share values and interests with, and we can spend time with those people, that'll do wonders for us. It'll basically put a multiplier on your fun, your enjoyment, your progression in the things that you're working on. And it'll be a lot easier to resist scrolling for two reasons. The first one is that you don't need to go into escapism because you have people around you that you like, that you get energy from. And then second of all, it creates accountability. So if these motherfuckers not going to tolerate you scrolling on TikTok, that makes it harder to do so, right? But here's a big caveat to this. For guys like us that are on this path of self-improvement, of becoming the best versions of ourselves, that believe in discipline and delaying gratification, these core habits that we've learned, there are so few of us. Chances are you're probably the only one in your life that's actually on this path, which is so sad if you think about it. But for me, though, that's not actually the case. I have two other guys in my life that are on this path, my big brother and our friend. So I'm not actually entirely lonely on this path, which is so incredibly helpful, and I'm so eternally grateful for that. But the thing is, bro, like, I actually think it's better to be alone than it is to be with people that are not your people. People that don't share your values, interests, things like these, right? Might be people in school, people at the gym, like just the normal people that you see throughout your day-to-day life. Even your family, man. Forgive me for saying this, but like maybe even your family aren't even that like people that you really share values with, right? If you spoke to them about the diet section in this video, like that we shouldn't be eating all these fucking carbs and shit, and that we should be eating a lot of meat and eggs, they might tell you that it's dangerous. That, oh, no, 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 meat, oh fuck no, that causes cancer actually, because humans have eaten meat for millions of years, but somehow it actually causes cancer because the fucking fat doctors told me that it does, right? If your parents are like that, or your siblings are like that, and your family's like that, and the people in your life are like that, then I actually think it's better to be alone than it is to be with them, right? So this is sort of like a is not a quick action step that you can just take and improve your socialization immediately. Because the thing is, you kind of as long as you stay in your geographical area, you're kind of stuck with those people, right? And so I actually think it's better to be alone, for example, in school, than it is to speak with people that are not your people, and allow them to drag you down, right? And so, but then also, if you do have people in your life that are on this path, get closer to them. If there are some people that you can invigorate, and sort of that are on this path but not really taking it that seriously, help them, right? At least try to. It's probably not going to be successful. I'm just going to be totally honest, because it's very hard to convince people about stuff like this. But if you have someone in your life that you can share this mission with, that you can do all this stuff with together, take advantage of it, right? It's going to be super helpful, because socialization is going to be like, it's so deeply wired in our biological systems, right? You can imagine that. So if you have people in your life that are on this path, get closer to them. For everyone else, stay the fuck away from them. Because the thing is, this sort of effect of socialization, tribal socialization, is going to have the negative effect on you if you spend time with those people. Do you get that point, right? So you 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 basically only have two categories: people that are in the in group and the out group. And people on the in group, it could also be people, for example, online, like myself, for example. Even though, like, I'll never lie to you, like, I don't know you. I'm speaking to my fucking phone right now. I don't know you. You know me. And so I actually think it's better to have a sort of internet parasocial social circle than it is to have people in your life that drag you down. That's how I did it, right? I binge watch a lot of like fucking red pill Andrew Tate masculinity content in 2022 and 2023, and even after that. And so I actually think it's better that you build your social circle online until you can build it in person than it is for you to spend time in person with people that are not your people. Habit number 6: natural cold exposure. So if you think about it, how did the cavemen clean themselves? What kind of water were they in, right? You can imagine there weren't any hot tubs at that time. There weren't any fucking like jacuzzis or any bullshit like that. There weren't any bathtubs that you can just fill up with hot water and have a comfy little bath, right? They had to jump into the fucking lakes and the rivers, the freezing cold fucking lakes and rivers, right? And maybe they didn't clean themselves that often. Maybe they were scruffy motherfuckers. I don't know. But basically, the only water that they had access to was cold water, because hot water doesn't really exist naturally in nature, with the exception of hot springs, which are like, they're very rare, right? You're not gonna find those basically anywhere. And then if you're at the coastline and you're in fucking Thailand or some shit, sure, the water is going to be warmer, but in general, 99% of the time, the water was fucking cold for the caveman. And so that's going to be very natural for us as well. And so with cold exposure, that's kind of like when you oftentimes when you hop into cold water, like a cold shower, or a cold bath, a cold tub, right? And you stay in there, and you feel the pain of it. Like, obviously it's going to be very painful to do that, but afterwards there's something happening in your brain with your dopamine levels that I found really, really, really interesting. So cold exposure, like a cold shower, it actually has the same level of like mental sort of dopamine effect that cocaine has. But here's the big caveat: not like the cocaine with that it spikes your dopamine levels to fucking 1,000%, right? But then it crashes down, because that's what cocaine does in crack. But it stays there. It remains. It doesn't crash, right? Like, there has been a bunch of research, a bunch of studies on cold exposure, and cold exposure has shown to increase dopamine levels to an astronomical level, right? And that's why taking a cold shower, for example, in the morning, like I've done for 3 years now, basically 2.5 years. Like I started taking it in end of 2020, yeah, 2.5 years, right, basically. It gives you this sort of boost to the rest of the day because your dopamine levels are a lot higher. You go into this freezing cold water, it's super hard, you just want to get out, but you discipline yourself to stay in there for a few more seconds. And then when you get out, you feel so much better. It's like you start off your day with a victory, right? And so cold exposure was really a game changer for me because when I was like, it was in 2022. My big brother had already started taking cold showers, and he was like, "Bro, just try it." And I went into the cold shower, and it was it was shocking, right? It is a shock when you just step into the cold shower immediately without doing it the pussy way of having a hot then turning it cold, right? When you just hop into the cold shower, like cold turkey or whatever ism you want to put around it, it is going to be shocking. It's going to be very uncomfortable. It's going to be painful. But afterwards, you're going to have such a huge boost of energy, of momentum, of dopamine levels. Because like, dopamine is motivation, right? Dopamine in of itself isn't bad. Just because we associate the word dopamine with overstimulation, with TikTok, it's not like it's not dopamine in of itself isn't bad. It is motivation. It's just that when we fuck up our dopamine levels, that's bad, right? So it's going to be a lot easier for you to resist TikTok because when you have high dopamine levels, your brain doesn't crave this instant stimulation, right? Like when all you do is scroll TikTok and your dopamine levels plummet, that's the only thing that's stimulating enough for you to do, right? That's why we procrastinate. That's why you might come home from school, stop scrolling, and procrastinate the gym, right? Because your dopamine levels are so low and you don't have enough motivation to go to the gym, right? You don't have the required amount. With cold exposure, you can naturally increase your baseline dopamine, which is so powerful without the crash. And like it's maintained for hours, right? And it's such a huge thing. I've done it for a long time, and if you haven't tried it, I want you to have your first cold exposure within like as soon as you can, basically. If you can pause this video and just go have a cold shower right now, just step into the cold shower for a couple of seconds. That'll do wonders for you. It is the first step. Just make it as cold as possible. Step in for 1 second, then go out. Right? You don't need to do 1 minute the first time you do it. Obviously not. Have a progressive overload mindset with it. But it's been a hugely powerful habit for me in terms of quitting TikTok because number one, it's super healthy. Like there's a bunch of health benefits to it, and then also with the dopamine levels that you create this positive momentum, you create this energy and sort of wave of energy that you can ride for the rest of the day. And it's been super helpful for me. So if you haven't already, start doing it, you too. Habit number 7, prehistoric meditation. So if you think about it, when the cavemen were out hunting in the wild, they were hunting big animals, the boars, the deer, these kinds of animals, right? They had to wait for hours and hours and hours in a particular spot, like in a let's say when the forest turns into the field, right? I don't know what the fuck it's called in English, but basically, because I'm Swedish, right? But basically, you can imagine a big tribe of cavemen, like a fucking like 7 jacked, high testosterone cavemen, sitting just by a tree, overlooking the field and seeing all the animals, and they have to sort of observe the field, right, and see which animal they're gonna hunt. We're gonna pick that one. No, that one looks better. That one looks injured. It'll probably be easier to catch. They had to sit and wait for hours and hours and hours for the right opportunity to hunt, and they had to do this every single day. And with a meditation, so meditation is kind of like when you fuck it. Let me just explain meditation real quick. So meditation is when you are completely focusing on one thing, you're directing all your attention to one thing, and then when your mind automatically wanders, because it will wander, right? When it starts generating bullshit random thoughts, that TikTok, that bitch, that guy in high school, right? Meditation is manually redirecting your thoughts back to the original thought. That is meditation, and that's basically what our caveman ancestors had to do. They literally had to sit with by a field and see all the animals go by and really analyze the landscape and see when the perfect opportunity was to attack. And they had to be like super meditators, right? Because they had to have like supreme levels of focus, of attention span. TikTok, it's probably fucked up your attention span. It fucked up my attention span. That's why I procrastinated. I couldn't do like normal schoolwork. And so when we practice meditation, we reverse the effects of TikTok, which is huge, right? Like meditation is the antidote to TikTok. And meditation is not just something that we do in the modern day. Our caveman ancestors did that all throughout history, right? And so meditation, like, it'll give you such mental clarity. It'll give you such, like, I can, bro. The first time I meditated, I could not believe my fucking, like, how I felt. Right, I did 10 minutes of meditation, and I was like, this is the most clear-headed, the most mentally clear, most mentally sharp I've ever been. Like, it's almost like I've lived in, like, in a fucking lie before this. Right, it's huge. I wouldn't be hyping this up if it was like, if it wasn't that effective. Right, so just trust me on this one. Meditation is when you are, at least that's this is how I've done it. I put on guided meditation. So I have my headphones on, and I search for a YouTube video like guided meditation, and I put the video on, and the guy will say inhale, exhale, and I close my eyes and I follow the instructions. So I breathe in and out, and while I do that, I imagine, like, I do something called third eye meditation. So the third eye is kind of like your mental movies, your mental visualizations. So I sit down, I close my eyes, I breathe in and out, and I imagine something in my mind. I imagine a specific point in nature, for example. In Actually, if you will, we want to get really specific. I read a book series called Warriors. Is like, I read, it's fiction. I read the book series since fifth grade, and there's a huge world inside of it, right? And so I like to go into the warrior's world and just imagine myself being there and meditating on a specific spot, like just thinking about a spot, right? And then, like, for example, I'm imagining that I'm sitting by the lake, for example, and I'm meditating on the picture of the lake, right? So I'm visualizing the lake like this, right? I'm breathing in and out, and then whenever my mind randomly generates bullshit thoughts about other stuff, because it automatically will, right? We will never have a completely clear mind. We can just make it more clear, right? So it will generate another thought, but basically you don't actually realize that you've gotten another thought for a couple of seconds or even a minute. Sometimes it's kind of like you are one with a thought, right? So this is a kind of a higher level concept, but you don't actually realize that you've done it immediately. But then when you do, you have this sort of snapback moment. You're like, oh fuck, I'm supposed to be meditating right now, and then you bring back your focus, right? That's how, kind of how it works. At least that's how I've done it, and that's how I would recommend it for you. So meditation, it is such a hugely powerful habit. It'll reverse your fucked up attention span. It'll it'll reverse your dopamine levels. It's a very non-dopaminergic habit. It'll make just life more enjoyable. You'll be able to enjoy the present moment. Like, you won't need to go into escapism when you're on the bus, for example. You can just sit for 15 minutes and not have any external stimulation. Just enjoy the present moment, which is fucking huge when it comes to quitting TikTok. That's literally why we pick up our fucking phones, right? We pick up our phones, and then what? We start scrolling on TikTok. Why? Because we want to go into escapism. We're in this sort of low frequency mode, and meditation is literally the antidote to that. Just fucking trust me on this one. And so, how do we actually get into meditation? So, I meditate for an hour a day right now, which is a lot, right? But I have meditated for 10 to 20 minutes a day for the majority of my time meditating. So that's a good level, I would say, 10 to 20 minutes a day. You can obviously go higher than that, but at least get to that. But you don't actually have to start with that. Here's the key thing. I don't want you to start meditating, let's say doing a 10-minute meditation, and it being hard, right? And you quitting because it's hard or some shit like that, saying that, oh yeah, meditation doesn't work for me because you get all these random thoughts, right? I want you to start with like 30 or 60 seconds. Just start with 30 seconds and then level it up from there. Because, you can use the progressive overload mindset from the gym, for example, and it'll be a lot easier to keep going that way. So meditation is hugely powerful. If you've never done it before, you start with like 30 seconds and then level it up to 60 seconds, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and then 10 to 20 minutes. That's when I would say you're at a good level, right? And so after a couple of weeks, you'll start noticing that all these monkey, like, bullshit thoughts in your mind, that just disappear. You can actually focus, and it's such, like, before you open your, like, when you get the urge to start scrolling on your phone, you'll get like a snapback moment. You'll be like, fucking hell, what am I doing? You'll be snapped back to reality, right? So you'll sort of be interrupted between the urge to go and do something and your actual response to the urge, which is picking up the phone, right? So in the book Atomic Habits, big famous book about habit building, he talks about the habit loop. First you get the cue, which is the thing like the phone on the table. You get reminded of the thing, right? You see the thing, and then you get the craving, which is to indulge, and then you get the response, which is that you actually act on the craving, and then you get the reward, which is the dopamine, the pleasure, right? And then the reward reinforces the cue, so that the next time you get the cue, you're more likely to indulge, right? So that's the habit loop: cue, craving, response, reward. And what meditation does is that it breaks it apart, it interrupts you, it intervenes between craving and response. It makes you more mindful. It gives you the ability to observe your thoughts rather than to just act upon them like a little fucking monkey, right? And so it's hugely powerful. Get into meditation. It will fucking change your fucking life if you haven't done it already. I'm getting so passionate about this because it changed my life, and I know that it will change yours as well. Like it is literally that it should be on the same fundamental level as like sleep and eating food and breathing air and drinking water. Like it is like, of course you fucking meditate, right? It's man, it's so unbelievable that people are into this stuff. Or perhaps it is kind of unbelievable because most people are fucking retards, right? They're imbeciles. And so start meditating, and don't be like a fat gym goer who says, well, I went to the gym 3 times and I didn't build any muscle. Don't be like that with meditation. Don't be like, yeah, meditation doesn't work for me because my mind it wanders, right? Like, you're not supposed to be a fucking master after 3 minutes of meditation. Like, it's like saying, yeah, I did bicep curls, but I went to failure and I couldn't do anymore, so the gym doesn't work. Like, it's the same with as saying, yeah, I'm meditating and I'm getting all these random thoughts. It doesn't work for me. Like, that is the fucking point, you fucking retard, right? Like, just fucking listen to my words, right? Start meditating. Don't be upset that you are mindless as fuck in the beginning because you level up, right? It's the same with anything. Just stick with it. So meditation is hugely powerful, and I need you to get into it ASAP. Now, the final habit is something called raw solitude. So, solitude is when actually is not when you're alone necessarily. Solitude is simply when you're not receiving input from another human mind. So, for example, when you're walking alone in the forest and you're just listening to the birds, you're listening to the breeze swishing through the trees, right? That's solitude. And what it does is that it resets your dopamine levels, it gives you more mental clarity. It's super good for generating ideas, and most importantly, it'll stop you from scrolling TikTok. Why? Because you train yourself to be able to enjoy the present moment, kind of like meditation. So things like walking and just sitting and thinking, staring at your fucking wall. This is a big thing that I got from my mentor Hamza. Right? He like you can just sit and stare at your fucking wall, and it's better for you to do that than to start scrolling, obviously, right? Than to open TikTok. So solitude, like, we're deprived of solitude in the modern day. If you go on the bus, for example, like I do every single day, you'll see people glued to their fucking screens. You'll see people like all whenever they have a small pocket of time when they're not doing anything, when they're on the bus, in class, when they're getting bored or whatever, right? Between the sets in the gym, right? They're picking up their phone, they're scrolling. You know this stuff, right? So solitude is hugely powerful. It'll set you apart from modern people. It'll improve your attention span, and it goes really much hand in hand with both meditation and outdoors activities like being out in nature, for example. So I want you to think to yourself, like, when can you implement some solitude in your life? When can you just sit and train yourself or your ability to just sit with the present moment? It might be, for example, that you go on a walk in nature, for example, that you on the bus, you just look out the window, you don't do anything else, you don't listen to anything, you don't scroll on your phone, things like that. So solitude, because if you think about it, caveman, they were in solitude for a lot of the times. Of course, they were like, this is kind of counterintuitive to the socialization part, but basically, sure, they were socializing a lot, but they would also be in solitude where they were just walking around, not doing anything. And really, the main point that I want to get across is that they did not have things to distract themselves with, except for once a day when they ate foods. Like, bro, cavemen, they ate food like once a day or every few days, even a big feast with many thousands of calories. And sure, they had some berries every now and then, but basically they didn't stimulate themselves constantly, and they had some time to just look around and just enjoy nature, right? And do what the fuck they wanted to do. So solitude is another of these sort of a bit boring basic habits that will actually have a huge impact on your ability to think, and by extension resisting TikTok, right? So that's kind of how it works. Step 3, the implementation system. So now we know what habits to do and not to do in order to live more like our primal ancestors and climb the emotional frequency graph and stop scrolling on TikTok. But here's the key point. We need to make sure that we stay consistent on this. So back in 2023, when I learned this stuff, I was already doing some of the good habits. I was already doing cold exposure. I was doing exercise. I was going to the gym, right? But I was still inconsistent. For 80% of my day, I'd be productive. I'd be in this sort of masculine disciplined mode. But then for 20%, I'd waste time. I'd start scrolling on TikTok, right? That was the main problem to begin with. So we got to make sure that we actually stay consistent on these habits. Because when I first learned about these habits, I still kept falling into mini ruts because I hadn't built the systems around it, and so it was still super annoying. I was still wasting a lot of time, and so I tried using willpower as I had before, but it didn't really work because my willpower would just be like turned off for 20% of my day, which was super annoying, super frustrating for me. And so it was kind of like the same problem, and I reverted to the original strategy, which was going online and doing some research. And I started doing that, and I found out about a tactic that was hugely powerful for me. I stumbled upon a productivity video where the guy was talking about something called a timetable. That creating your own timetable, your own calendar, your own plan for your day was one of the most effective things, most powerful things you could do for your productivity. And it was this idea that you should be not just have your timetable in school, for example, or in work, because in school, for example, we know what the fuck we should be doing. We have math here, English here, what else, like social studies here. We know what to do at all times. Imagine if you showed up to school and the teacher just said, "You have this exam this day this week, right? You can do whatever the fuck you want until then." Do you think students would be more or less productive that way? Probably less, because it's just a lot easier to follow a set plan and execute on it instead of trying to come up with a plan as you go along. At least that was the thesis or the sort of hypothesis that I got from these things that I learned about. And also in the military, like all the motherfuckers in the military are up at 5 a.m. making their bed, then going for a run, like 5 a.m. this, 6 a.m. this, 7 a.m. this. Like they have their set in stone timetable for the entire day, so they know what the fuck they should be doing for the entire day. And so this system of having a timetable, it is proven to make you more productive and just make it harder for you to fall into things like TikTok scrolling mini ruts, right? The idea was to create a timetable for your entire life, not just for school, but for your entire life, so that you knew exactly what you should be doing the first thing you wake up, or from the second that you wake up to the second that you fall asleep, right? This was the idea. And I tried it. I made my own timetable, slotted in which activities I wanted to do at each time, just made my ideal day, right? And I just tried following it to the best of my ability. And what was the result? I was way more fucking productive. Surprise, surprise, right? I didn't fall into mini ruts nearly as much because I knew what the fuck I was supposed to do throughout the day, right? I wasn't coming home and just wondering what I should be doing, having these internal battles where my subconscious mind pipes up and tells me to go scroll, right? I stopped having these battles nearly as much, and it sort of unified my internal sort of identity, which is just, it's a sort of an advanced concept. But the lesson of the story is that we can build systems and use tools and mindsets and routines and like schedulings around our habits to make them a lot more productive and to stay consistent on them, right? So we don't just want to be saying replace the bad habits with the good ones, replace scrolling with this activity, right? We don't just want to do that because it can seem kind of vague. Like, how do you actually go about implementing these habits? Cold exposure, meditation, walking in nature, working out, these kinds of, how do you actually implement it practically? And my system for this is to use a timetable, and it's been hugely effective for me. And the whole idea is to not rely on willpower but to rely on preparation, because we can prepare beforehand and then we're not affected by the emotionality of the circumstance, which can impact our willpower, right? So that's the big lesson I want to give you from the story. We can build routines, have mindset, use tools and build systems around our habits to make them way more effective, and so we stay consistent on them. And so the first big habit is, of course, the timetable, right? So the timetable, what do you actually do practically to implement this? Like, the whole idea with it is to eliminate free time and to eliminate decision fatigue, idle time. So idle time is kind of like time that you don't know what to do with, dead time, pockets of a couple of hours here and there, or even like 15 minutes or something on the bus, for example, that you don't know what to do with. And those are the periods that used to scroll a lot. And like I when I had planned to go to the gym with my friends at this time, there was no way that I was gonna procrastinate that shit, right? Because I'd planned it beforehand, and there was no way that I was not gonna go to school because I wasn't gonna forget when to go to school. Like I already knew it, right? Like I already had it planned beforehand. There was no way that I was gonna I could procrastinate on school. Sure, also because there was an incentive for me to be there, because I would get punished if I didn't like show up because I'd get um invalid absence or whatever it's called, right? And so the idea is we want to go into a calendar software like Google Calendar, for example. That's the one I use, and slot out our entire day, our entire week, and remove as much idle time, as much free time as possible. And the reason is that like when we have free time, like they say it in the Bible, bro. Like idle hands are the devil's workshop. Like idle hands is like kind of like empty hands when you don't have a task at hand. And what happens then? You're so much more likely to scroll. Why? Because you had this decision fatigue inside of you. You had this mental battle when your subconscious mind pipes up all that stuff, right? And so the more free time we eliminate, the more time we eliminate that could potentially go to scrolling on TikTok. Because these, like scrolling on TikTok, is not a mindful decision. It is not a conscious decision. It is a mindless decision. We see the phone, grab it, and start scrolling. That is because we don't know. Like, if we already knew intrinsically what to do, yeah, we this like if you had a fucking dentist appointment, you would make sure to fucking show up to that shit, right? And I want you to start treating your normal day-to-day activities like dentist appointments. Like you have set this time for your activity. Fucking voice cracks. Who gives a shit? You have set this time for your activity. You're gonna show up at that time and do that thing. If you are thinking that constantly, you'll scroll a lot less. That's just how it works. Because it's way easier to just execute on the plan that you set beforehand rather than trying to come up with it as you go along, as you go throughout your day with all the emotionality of the environments that you are in. Like, if you're in, bro, if you are in bed, you've slept in, for example, on a weekend, and it's cozy, it's comfortable, it's warm, and your phone is within arm's reach, you're gonna fucking reach it unless you have set a clear plan the day before of the morning routine, for example, that you're gonna have. You're gonna wake up, you're gonna hop in the cold shower, you're gonna do the meditation, whatever. The idea is that we want to add as much friction as possible to just indulging in TikTok, because when we get these cues, you remember the habit loop. When we get these cues of seeing our phone and getting the craving of doing it, if we can break that with another thought of like, holy shit, I'm actually supposed to be doing this habit right now. I'm supposed to go to the gym at this time. Like the more we plan, the more of these sort of snapback moments, you could call them, we will experience. The more infrequently we will just fucking grab our phones and start scrolling. That's kind of the idea. So how do we actually go about implementing a timetable? You go into Google Calendar, or whatever calendar software you want to use. You can use Notes on your phone, for example, but I use Google Calendar. It's the best one in my opinion. So you can go into Google Calendar, create an account. It's all for free, super easy to use. And first of all, you set your sort of set time activities. So the activities that you have to do no matter what. For example, you might be legally obligated to go to school, for example. You might have to go to school, and you can't really change when the classes are. That's how it is for me. So you start with that, you slot those periods in, and then you slot in when you're going to go to sleep, when you're going to go to bed, when you're going to eat, when you're going to work out, when you're going to do all these activities, right? And you just fill up your time like with your ideal day. You have these habits in mind that we covered with the cold exposure meditation, nature, that kind of stuff. You have that in mind and just plot out your ideal day from start to finish, or rather you can plot out your ideal week, because at least for me, my day to day changes but my week stays the same, so that's how I do it. And so you just go into Google Calendar, plot out every single activity that you want to get done, and then you put that on repeat. It's super easy to use. You don't have to do it every single week. It'll repeat automatically. And so after you've done that, you've literally done like one of the biggest, highest leverage, most powerful tasks you can do in this entire journey. I'm not kidding you, right? This is huge. It is a one-time action that you set up and reap the rewards for so long, right? And so you do that, and then what is your objective now? The goal that you have from now on is to just follow your timetable to the best of your ability. And here's what will happen. You'll probably fuck up, right? I did in the beginning. It is natural. You'll probably just you might just follow your timetable for 30%. But that is probably better than your normal day right now, isn't it? Right? So even if you just follow it for 30% or 50%, it's probably better than your average days. So don't get discouraged by this, by being inconsistent on your timetable. You learn it, it's the progressive overload mindset. You learn it over time, you'll memorize it, it'll become part of you. Like just fucking obsess over your timetable, and eventually you'll just have an automatic fucking signal in your brain basically that tells you all the time, man, 8 a.m. is rolling around, 11 a.m. is rolling around, 12 p.m. is rolling around. We should be doing these activities, and you'll just have it integrated in your like mind and your body, and it'll be so effective for quitting TikTok because you're like, there's no way that I will start scrolling on TikTok if I get these constant reminders in my mind automatically that say in 30 minutes you're going to do this, and in 5 hours you're going to do this, right? If I have it implanted into my mind and in my body, like, there's no way that I'm going to open my phone mindlessly because I'm used to following this timetable. And this is what happens: you habituate. Like, the things that you do manually become the things that you do automatically. Why? Because the human body is designed for familiarity. We want to do things that are comfortable, that are familiar, that we have done before. That's how evolution works. So if we can trick that in our to our advantage, right? This is like, that's literally what we're doing. The more you follow your timetable, the more you just obsess over it, the more it'll be integrated in your mind. And so what happens is that that will become the familiar, comfortable ground for you, and that's what you'll naturally revert to instead of scrolling. At least that's the idea. And like, if you just obsess over it and you just try to follow it the best as you can, you don't get discouraged. That is what's going to happen to you. And then another thing you can do is to identify the critical time periods for you. So the time periods that in which you are the most likely to start scrolling on TikTok. For me, it was in the afternoon and in the evening because I'd come home from school, I'd be tired, I'd have a fuck ton of carbs in my system, I'd just be lethargic. I just seem to have a natural energy dip in like at like 3 p.m. or some shit in the afternoon for some reason. And that was when I started scrolling the most. And then also in the evening when I just had a few hours before bedtime and I got stuck on my phone, um, in bed or whatever, or on the couch in the evening. That was for me in the afternoon and in the evening. So for you, identify the time periods where you're the most likely to start scrolling, and really make sure that you have some activities there that are going to negate that basically. So if, for example, if you were like, or if you are like I was, and you come home from school and you find yourself scrolling, like, let's say you have a planned workout at 6 p.m., just put your workout at 4 p.m. when you come home from school, and then, for example, you could go directly from school to the gym. You packed your pre-workout meal, for example. That was what used to happen to me. I'd come home, I was supposed to eat my pre-workout meal, my oats, my whatever, right, my sandwiches, to get some carbs or energy for the gym. But what would have been way better was just to bring the food to school and then go directly to the gym, like, and eat on the bus or whatever, and then not have this, like, just skip this entire time block entirely, right? So that's a big thing you can do. Identify the critical time windows for you. Maybe it's the in the morning, on the weekends, for example. Maybe it's the afternoon, maybe it's the evening. Figure out where they are, the time periods, and make sure you have a habit there that will make it easier for you to avoid that. And because I'm a nice guy, I'll leave 7 free timetable examples in the description. It's a link in the description. You can check them out. Like, you can, it's a document with 7 timetables that I've made that you can just copy if you want to, and then obviously you can reorganize some stuff for your specific circumstance and preference. So just for like, you can just get inspiration from there. I'll left the link in the description to them. It's a Notion page. It's super easy to use. Just click the link. You'll get 7 timetables, and they'll open up in your Google Calendar immediately. So just because I'm a nice guy, I provide that to you as well. So you can do that and check them out and see which one fits you the best, and obviously make them more specific to you so that you can actually use them. Because I obviously don't know your specific situation. Now, the second tool we can use to implement these habits better and actually stay consistent on them is something called habit stacking. So you might be like, Leo, how the fuck am I supposed to have time for all these habits, right? Socializing, working out, cold exposure, meditating, like, being out in nature. How the fuck am I supposed to do them all on a daily basis? This is how I've done it, and it's been super effective for me. You just stack habits on top of each other. So let me explain what that means. You do them at basically the same time. So, for example, every single day I will go out into nature, into the outdoors gym near, like, just outside the forest, like basically in this forest, a few minutes away from it, right? And I'll work out with my friend. So what am I doing there? I'm being out in nature. I'm getting a fuck ton of sunlight. That's the first one. I'm socializing and I'm working out. I'm exercising and I walk there as well. So it's just more exercise, right? So what does that do? It stacks three habits on top of each other. Another example would be to hop in the cold shower immediately after waking up and then make meditating, right? Obviously, you can't do them at the exact same time, but you can still do them immediately after each other, and that just makes it more efficient, and you'll be a lot more likely to stay consistent on them. Like I've had hundreds of mornings like that where I just woke up, hopped in the cold shower, made my bed, and meditated. Right? I've done that so much, and it's been super fruitful for me. Because when you do them in this strict order, it's a lot easier for you to not procrastinate them because you associate one activity with the other, right? It's kind of how our brain works. Or, for example, you could go on a walk or even like a hike in your local forest area, like this for me, right? This is just 15, 20 minutes from home. And you could go on a long walk, just think for yourself. When you're doing that, you're practicing solitude and you are being out in nature, you're getting sunlight. You might even sit down to meditate a bit. Like you can stack these habits on top of each other. And I want you now to look at what habits you're going to do and see your timetable, see which habits are would be done the most effectively if they were done immediately after each other or at the exact same time. It might be working out with a friend, going for a walk in nature when you're practicing solitude. Think about the habits that you're going to do and see which ones you can habit stack. Now, the next tool you can use is something called a habit tracker. So we stack them and we track them, stack them. So you probably know what a habit tracker is. It is when you have a piece of paper, or you could also do it digitally, but I think just that's just more of the pussy way, to be honest. You grab a piece of paper and you make horizontal lines like this across the paper, and then also vertical lines, and then you fill out the date and the habits that you're gonna do. So, for example, right now as I'm recording this, it is the 26th of April. So I'll write, for example, the 26th of April. If I were to make a new one, right, I write, or to be honest, I just do the entire month. So, for example, if I were to make one for the month of May 2025, I'd go from first, second, third, and all the way down to the, what is it, 30th or 31st, whatever. I think it's 30th. So you do that, and then also you write the sort of habits that you're going to do, the main core habits. It's the nature slash sunlight. It is the exercise. It is a clean diet. It is the cold exposure. It is the meditation. Those are the big five in my opinion. And so you write them out on a piece of paper. You can just search up habit tracker and see how it looks. Right? It's not complicated at all. In fact, I'll actually put up a picture of my habit tracker on the screen right now, so you can just derive some inspiration from that and see how it looks. And then what you do is that you tape that shit up onto your wall, right? You stick it up onto your wall. And the reason that I don't right now I don't have a habit tracker on my wall is because my parents don't really like they don't really subscribe to this sort of philosophy that I'm on of the self-improvement discipline grind, and I don't want my parents to just like get into an argument with me and start tearing down my papers, right? Because I've had a lot of papers on my walls, and for example, my mom, she'd be looking at it when she was arguing with me about some shit and be like, "What the fuck is that?" Or not, she wouldn't swear, but like, "What is that?" And she'd get a bit mad at me, right? And she'd tear it down. So I don't have it on my wall right now. I have it folded in my backpack. But the main thing is have a physical habit tracker where you track all your habits that you're doing, and it's not a huge thing. Like I'm not gonna lie to you, it's not as powerful as, for example, a timetable, but it will add some gamification, some accountability. It'll be just like it's one of these small things that you can do like with 5 minutes a day, 3 minutes a day. Just set it up and then tick all the boxes, and it's just like a build positive momentum when you've ticked all the habits, and it's just great, right? And if you don't, if your parents aren't gonna fucking tear your habit tracker down fucking from the wall, stick it up onto your wall and don't fucking lie. If you miss a day, don't lie about it, right? Like it doesn't like it does nothing. Okay, so the more that you lie onto it, the less you'll trust yourself, and the more that you tell the truth, even if you have missed a day, for example, that'll just reinvigorate you to keep going, right? So obviously, if you do them, tick them. If you don't. That's the main thing. Like, don't lie to your fucking self, man. Like, you're supposed to be out here conquering the world. How the fuck would you be able to do that without having your own self united, right? How could you not be your own ally 100% and still like be able to be able to defeat other enemies outside of you? So don't lie, stick it up on your wall, and take the habits that you do. The next tool we can use to implement our habits better is something called a basic attack. So in video games, you have a basic attack and you also have special attacks. So I played a lot of Overwatch when I was younger, and if you know Overwatch, you know some of the characters. Like one of the characters is called Roadhog, and he his basic attack, that the thing that he can do all the time, is his scrap gun. He has a gun, and you can just press a button and it'll shoot, right? But he also had some special attacks, like throwing out a chain hook that would grab the enemies and pull it towards him, and so he could kill them more easily, which I was fucking good at. But basically, basic attacks are things that you naturally revert to when you don't know what to do. So the thing is, most likely you are going to fall off your timetable. I do a lot because life gets in the way, right? Like I'm never gonna lie to you about that. Of course, life's gonna get in the way, even though it's annoying for guys like us when we have high standards and high ambitions. We don't want to tolerate like falling off our timetables just like that. But for example, if there's some sort of inconvenience occurring. Like I'm not, of course, sometimes you're gonna fall off your timetable and life's gonna get in the way. So what do you do then? You do your basic attack. You have a basic attack that you naturally revert to, which is not TikTok. Here's the key part. Because your basic attack up until this point has been to grab your fucking phone and start scrolling on TikTok. That's always been, right? That's been your basic attack. Your special attack, sure, you might go to the gym sometimes. You might do a deep work study session, whatever, side hustle work. But your basic attack has been largely to grab your phone and start scrolling. That was how it was for me, but it's not anymore because I changed my basic attack. So for me, my basic attack right now is to read books. I have either a PDF file or on Kindle or a physical copy with me at all times. And then also, I've in the past it's been educational podcasts and long form talking head videos like these ones, like lecture style educational non-stimulating content where you actually learn stuff. That's been my basic attack for the longest time. And I just like, the more you do it automatically, or sorry, the more you do it manually, the more you'll do it automatically. So after a while, when you manually like just grit your teeth and like don't grab your phone as your basic attack, and instead you open, for example, a podcast, you listen to that. You're on the bus, for example, you're going to school. Instead of grabbing your phone and scrolling on TikTok, you put your headphones in or on and you just look outside the window while listening to the podcast. That's 10 times better, 100 times better, right? It's so much less stimulating, and you can actually learn stuff from it. Or you have a book, for example, a physical copy. That's perhaps even better because the education is so pure in a book. There's no stimulation, no comments, no whatsoever, right? So books and podcasts and long form educational talking head videos like these ones have been my basic attack. And basically, you want to make sure that you don't like, you'll get better, right? In the beginning, you'll find yourself still having your basic attack being TikTok because that's how you've been wired, right? That's been your, like, you've done that for so long, right? And it's just natural that that's going to be how it is for now. But the more you manually change it, eventually you'll just shed that layer, like shed that skin, shed that part of your identity, and sort of just rewire your brain into this new way of thinking. And it's been hugely powerful for me because of the fact that, like, when you open your phone to scroll on TikTok, it is not a conscious decision. It is not a decision where you go, yeah, fuck yeah, man, I should open my phone and scroll right now. It is a subconscious, mindless decision, which we fix through meditation, but also just through the fact that we make sure that our standard mindless decision is something productive. And we do that through, first of all, manually deciding which one is going to be, and just catching ourselves grabbing the phone, but then saying, no, fuck that shit. I'm going to open my book instead. That's how you do it. Now, the next tool we can use is something called Forsee Failure. So, foreseeing failure is basically just to see and plan ahead of the things that could fuck you up in the future on this timetable, on this grind, right? Of this detox away from TikTok. This is going to require some humility because for us guys that are like have healthy levels of testosterone and are highly ambitious and not complacent in life, we want to have this positive sort of empowering mindset with us, and thinking about when we could fuck up, when we could get screwed over by ourselves is not very nice to think. Like if you manually see yourselves and as like, if you just manually think to yourself, when could I fuck up in this journey? What could make me grab my phone when I actually wasn't planning to? How could I fall off this? And the reason that we do this is not to think to ourselves that we are like, not to victimize ourselves or to diminish our own self-image in any way, right? It is just to plan ahead. So I learned the importance of planning a while ago, and I I was 12 years old, I believe, 13 years old, something like that. And I watched a series on Netflix called How to Train Your Dragon, and like the TV the show, not the movies, but the Netflix show, Race to the Edge. That's it. And it was super interesting because when I saw it for the first time in the second season, the main protagonist, he's this guy, right? And then there's an antagonist, his enemy, called Viggo Grimborn. If you know, shout out to the guys who know that. But basically, the antagonist, he fucking outsmarted the protagonist, like the bad guy outsmarted, outwitted the good guy so badly. And I was just mesmerized by the way that he'd planned everything. He'd tricked him, he'd set him up, he'd manipulate the entire process, he'd planned everything from the beginning, right? And it's kind of like in chess. You have to see the board in the future. You have to see how could I lose? What are my weaknesses, right? The big lesson is that, like, if we can plan from the beginning and foresee the ways in which we could fail, we're going to be able to prevent them much more easily. And when I learned about this concept of planning, and I saw this motherfucker Viggo Grimborn in this series, how he outsmarted the protagonist, I was just like, yeah, man, it was I was truly mesmerized, and that was really when it clicked for me the first time, the power of planning. And so when we plan in terms of quitting TikTok, we want to think for ourselves, when could I start scrolling on my phone? When are the times when I'm the most vulnerable to it, which is similar to the critical time period thing that we mentioned earlier. But basically, when you think that, and then think to yourself, what can I do to stop that? It is going to require some humility from you, but what I would just like try tell you to do is to think about when you've done it in the past, and it'll be a lot easier, right? Just think to yourself, when do I usually do it? Because those are probably the times that you're going to be the most likely to do it in the future, obviously. So just think that for yourself, foresee the failure, see the ways in which you could screw yourself over, and then make sure you have a plan to prevent it. Because if this guy, Viggo Grimborn, went into battle unprepared, not having planned ahead and thought about his own weaknesses and just being like, fucking, nah, bro, I don't have any weaknesses. Is that your mindset? Is your mindset that no, there's no way I could fail? Is that really it? Are you supposed to break a habit that you've had for years in seconds? Are you supposed to do that really? Like, just think for yourself, man. And I'm not saying this to destroy your ego or anything like that, because I think ego and arrogance and self-belief and confidence, I think those are very useful, right? That's just my values personally. But we need to make sure that we are chess players that go into battle prepared. Like, how stupid would it be for Viggo Grimborn, this antagonist, to go into battle and not take into account his own weaknesses and prepare for those? It's just such a basic lesson, but it's like it is simple, not easy. Because when you have this kind of mindset that we guys have, we want to like empower ourselves and think of ourselves highly, but we have been in order to actually do that and have success in it, we need to actually see the ways in which we can screw ourselves over and then prepare for it. Now the next tool we can use is something that I mentioned earlier, but I want to say it again, right? It is to become obsessed about your timetable. So you should know all of the time, like, you should absolutely be have your timetable memorized. You can, for example, think in school. If I were to just ask you right now, do you know what times your classes are, for example, or if you're a bit older and you have 9 to 5 work, like, do you know which times you should be at what places? Probably yes. I go to school. I know when the fuck I should be at these classes, right? All of the time. And so what will happen when you obsess over them, when you have them in your mind, is that they will become part of you, and then you'll, like, all these normal cues of grabbing your phone, they'll go away so much easier. The more you obsess over your timetable, the more it'll be ingrained inside of you, and it'll just become part of you. It'll be so much easier to stick to. Like, I know, like, bro, I know from the second that I wake up to the second that I fall asleep, I know what I should be doing for every single second of the day. And also another tactic that's super useful for this, to actually practically implement this, is to every single night log into your Google Calendar in your laptop, right, or whatever you use, desktop, phone, whatever. You log into that shit, and then you go into each time block of tomorrow, and you make the time blocks more specific. So instead of just saying study, you say read these pages in this book, or if instead of working out, you say do this, like these exercises, or this workout. You're gonna do push with this guy, for example. Or if you have a side hustle or some business work, I'm gonna work on this task. I'm gonna, for example, for me, yesterday, I was like, I'm gonna record the second half of this full guide, right? Like, so you can literally just go into your calendar every single night also, and just fucking constantly obsess over it and go and make specifications. And so like the more specific the better, the more variables of it you have in your mind, the more specific they are in general, the better you will do. And the reason is that you eliminate decision fatigue as much as possible, and you stop having these internal battles when you're thinking to yourself about what to do. So like these sort of nighttime planning blocks, mini planning blocks, they have been super useful for me. So I really urge you to do that as well, and to just obsess over your timetable. Put it as the redirect tab on your laptop. Like I have that. Whenever I open Chrome or a new tab, instantly it sends me to my calendar, and then from there I can make the manual decision of the website that I want to go on. But I look at my timetable like dozens of times a day, just like fucking be a psychopath, like psychopathically obsessed over it, basically, because that will be the most effective for quitting TikTok, because you'll just have like it'll the more you fill up your brain with these thoughts of, yeah man, fuck yeah, I'm gonna do this workout this time, you just fill up, you're constantly obsessed over this grind culture in your mind, the less space there is for TikTok. That's just how it works. You replace the thoughts with other thoughts, you replace the habits with other habits, you break the associations and you rebuild them. The more you have your timetable, or rather the more you obsess over your timetable and think to yourself, yeah, at 4 p.m. I'm gonna go to the gym, the less your brain will associate TikToks, like just going on your phone and scrolling on TikTok, with that time period, which it most likely does now, if you scroll a lot at 4 p.m. after school, for example, like I did. And so you just break these associations within you, and it'll be a lot easier to quit TikTok, because you'll just effortlessly just stop thinking about it when you replace it with your timetable and this grind thing, right? The next tool we can use is simply the progressive overload mindset. So if you've been going to the gym for any period of time, you probably know the progressive overload mindset. You start with the empty barbell, then you put on the 2.5 kg, then you level it up, and eventually you're at a very good point. And like I've mentioned this before, but in general, with these habits that we're going to do, that I prescribe to you, the meditation, the cold showers, the clean diet, all of it, we want to have a progressive overload mindset. Because the truth is, you probably scrolled on TikTok for years, and like you can't expect to rewire that habit instantly, right? There's going to be some level of progressive deloading, rather, and then progressive overload of the things that you're going to replace it with. So the idea is that we want to start off small and collect the first wins, which then builds positive momentum, which propels us forward. So for example, with meditation, if you've never meditated before, start with a fucking 30-second meditation, right? Start with a 30-second meditation, and don't have this little fucking mindset that if you want to do 10 minutes because you have this you think you're hot shit or something. You want to start off with 10 minutes, you want to start off with 20 minutes, which is obviously having ambition is something very, very positive. But if you do that, the chances are you'll not be skilled enough, because you haven't done it any like you haven't done it before. Obviously you're not going to be skilled if you haven't done it before, and so you'll not really reap the benefits of it, because it'll be so hard for you. Like, bro, can you like whatever your bench press is right now, 60 kg or whatever, if I were to tell you, bro, go and bench press 140 kg, could you do that right now? Probably not. And so why do you think that you could do that with these other habits, right? So start with a progressive overload mindset. Literally, a 30-second meditation is a win, right? And then you level that up. A 1 second like 1 second cold shower is a win, and then you level that up. Like I can promise you, bro, it is like there's something called the winner's effect, which is that when you have collect your first win, you build positive momentum. You're so much more likely to get the next one and the next one and the next one. Like when I played Overwatch, the video game, and I lost a game, I would get into these losing streaks. And the thing with a losing streak is that you start tilting. You start losing more and more and more and more and more, and then that just compounds. It's a negative spiral, and it also works the other way around. So I remember one specific example when I was at my what is it called, like um, country home or whatever, summer, like a place in the archipelago on the countryside that my family has, that we go out into in the summer, right? And I brought my laptop, and I was gonna play some Overwatch. Like this was when I was 13, 12, like in 2021, and yeah, 13. I was playing I was playing Overwatch on my laptop, and I was good. I thought like I was good, but then my teammates were fucking horrible. At least that's what I told myself, right? But that was the truth also. But my teammates were fucking horrible, and I lost so much. I started losing one, then the other one. I had like a 7 loss streak, which is really bad, right? And I actually started basically crying, and like, yeah, I started crying because I had this losing streak, and it was just so negatively reinforcing to continue. Still, I was addicted to it, so I kept going. But in general, like if you can just lower the bar for success so that you can get across it, it'll be like you'll get to the end point a lot faster. Like instead of trying to do 20 minutes of meditation immediately, you'll probably reap the rewards and get there faster if you start with 30 seconds, then level it up to 1 minute, then 3 minutes, then 5 minutes, then 10, 20, right? That's how I've done it, and that's what works for me the best. So have this progressive overload mindset, have a student mindset, be humble about where you are right now, but be fucking arrogant as shit about where you're gonna be in the future. That's how I see it. Because the thing is, if you do a 30-second meditation, you'll probably want to keep going, right? If you go and do one set of push-ups, or you go for a 3-minute walk outside, chances are you'll probably get positively reinforced to the point that you'll just continue, because you'll probably just be like, yeah, this is kind of fun actually. I want to keep doing this. You get the positive momentum, and it's super powerful. So just have this progressive overload mindset with all the habits that we're implementing. Now, the next tool we can use is something called take the first step, and it is a mindset. So this goes hand in hand with the progressive overload mindset, and it is this idea that our brain can only comprehend like the big mounting task that we have to do, the 20-minute meditation, or the full workout, or the 2-hour walk in nature, or the big thing that's the big cold shower, for example. But what we actually just have to do is to go one step at a time, because our brain cannot comprehend the warm up, the build up towards the big thing. That is the idea. Like, I learned this concept from a guy called Hamza Ahmed on YouTube. He was talking about this time when he was on a mountain, and he saw a guy that was climbing up the other side. He was like a Royal Commando Marine guy, like basically a Navy SEAL. And then one of the things that this guy was talking about was that he was this big disciplined David Goggins type of guy, right? And one of the main things that he had done for his discipline was to take things one step at a time. So instead of thinking about the big thing that you have to do, just think about the first step, and by the time you get there, you'll actually be so in the flow of it. You'll be in the zone. You'll be motivated to do it. That's how it works, right? It's not about trying to visualize this huge mountain that you have to hike up towards. It's just about taking the first step, reaching the first milestone. Because when you do, you build up this positive momentum, and you want to keep going. That's how it works. At least that's how it works for me. And really, like, just take your fucking shoes on and then walk outside. For example, if you've decided that you're gonna go on a 1 hour no phone, no stimulation walk outside in nature, for example, just stand up from your computer chair, put your shoes on, and go outside. And I guarantee, just by doing that, you'll be 50% more motivated to do it, which is huge, right? So this is a hugely powerful mindset that you can utilize as well. Take the first step. Don't visualize the big mountain. Now, the final tool we can use to implement these caveman habits better and actually stay consistent on them is something that I call changing your self-image. So it is pretty straightforward. Change your self-image from the guy you are right now to the guy, or rather the version of you that's actually been making the progress, that's actually achieved the thing. So this is a pretty tricky concept to understand, but I want to give you an analogy, right? So imagine two guys in a party, right? They are both trying to stop drinking alcohol. They've just been like, they just go to the party to hang out with their friends, right? But they want to stop drinking. And imagine they get offered, each of them gets offered a drink, right? The first guy gets offered a drink, and he says, no, I'm trying to quit drinking right now. And then you imagine the other guy, and he just says, no, I don't drink. Which one of those guys do you think will be the most likely to actually indulge? Probably the first guy, because he sees himself as a guy who drinks but is trying to quit drinking. And this is like, it's a pretty abstract, high level concept, but if you can just lock in right now, this will do wonders for you. So, like, visualize the version of you, the 2.0 version of you, that that stops scrolling on TikTok entirely, that hasn't like that has not that doesn't have it as a problem in his life. Just visualize the version of yourself and write it down. Go into a document, write all the traits, all the characteristics, all the skills, the beliefs, the worldviews, like everything about him that is different from you now. Write that stuff down in a document, and that is literally what you have to trick your brain and pretend that you already are right now, and then basically just decide that you are that guy and start acting like him. Because the thing is, we are like our own beliefs about ourselves and about the world. Our brain will subconsciously try to find ways to justify that. It'll try to find ways to justify how our beliefs are correct. For example, if I see myself as a person who does this, I am a person who wakes up early, then my brain will automatically think to itself and sort of come up with ways in which that will be true, because we want to justify our own beliefs. That's just innate to humans. And it works the same with like basically all habits. And if you just see yourself as the guy who doesn't scroll, you see yourself as this like hyper focused sort of non-dopaminergic guy that's just sitting there amongst the peasants on the bus, for example. You're just sitting out looking out the window, for example, and all the other peasants are glued to their phones. If you see yourself as that guy, no matter if it's actually true or not, will you be more likely to be that, to act like that guy, or not? Probably, right? You know, like it's a pretty tricky concept to grasp, but it's hugely powerful, because it's kind of like you just wormhole, you teleport your way to the other side of this entire transformation instantly. And this specific action step, it'll put everything else in this guide on a supercharge, right? Like it's hugely powerful. You just visualize the guy that you want to become at the end of this transformation. He's quit TikTok entirely, he's so focused. He can actually, like, he never procrastinates. His attention span is phenomenal. His life enjoyment and dopamine levels are so high. Just imagine that guy, how he is, right? And just decide that you are that guy right now and start acting like him. That is just how it works, right? So it's a pretty tricky concept to understand, but just try to follow the steps that I laid out, and it'll do wonders for you. And this will require some willpower, but meditation will help with that. Like the more you meditate, the more you'll be able to manually force thoughts into your mind and just make that your thought, basically. And really what happens afterwards, like I've said many times in this guide so far, what you do manually will become what you do automatically. So after a while of just manually just meditating on the thought of the fact that you are this guy, your brain will automatically start believing it. It's just how it works. So just try it. It'll do wonders for you. Step 4, the environment setup. So now it's time to set up the environment. Like we have went through the primal reset. We have realized that we have to live more like our primal ancestors in order to quit TikTok, because we want to climb the emotional frequency graph and avoid getting into mini ruts. And so we have implemented the habits that we're going to do through these tools that we just covered in the previous step. So now it's time to set up the environment, because the idea is we want to set up our environment in a way that propels us in this direction, this new direction that we've set. So we want to engineer our environment to make it as easily as possible to follow the plan that we've set right now with these habits and these tools. And so we want to basically look at everything in our environment and see what things encourage us to keep scrolling, to be the kind of guy who keeps scrolling, and remove all of that and replace it with things that propel us in the right direction. That's kind of the idea. So the big first one is your digital environment. So this is going to be in the form of your phone. So you're most likely not scrolling on your iPad or on your laptop or something like that. You're most likely scrolling on your phone. So that's going to be the big one. And so there are 9 things that I've done and that has been really helpful for me in order to just make my phone less stimulating, less addictive, and less appealing for me, and that way I can break the association between my phone and TikTok and this reward that my brain gets. So the first one is to enable grayscale on your phone. So grayscale is kind of like you make your phone black and white. So grayscale means that, like, here's white, here's black, and then there's a scale in between which is gray, right? So you can do that in your settings in 30 seconds, right? And what this will do for you is that it'll make your phone so much more boring and so much less appealing and so much less stimulating. Like, if you're on your phone right now, pause this video, go into settings, click search for color filters, and click on grayscale, and then go into TikTok again and see how much less stimulating it is. Just like you'll see, and this is also like research sort of study backed as well. Like enabling grayscale decreases consumption by 30% across all people. It is hugely powerful. So it'll seem like for the first few hours that you have it on your phone, it'll be kind of boring, it'll be dull, you'll be like, what the fuck is this, man? Like I'm gonna seem weird in front of other people. Who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck? Like, be the fucking weird guy. Be the weird guy who's not scrolling on his phone, wasting hours of his life every fucking day, right? Be that motherfucker. So turn on grayscale, and then what will happen is that after a few days of doing this, then you might, for example, want to just for a few seconds turn it back on or turn it back off, and then go onto TikTok, for example, or any app, and see all the colors that are just showing up, and you'll see what I mean by, like, you'll see how addictive this shit actually is. You'll see why social media is so addictive and why it's so stimulating when you've had grayscale on for a while and then you turn it back off and then obviously you turn it back on again. But like, you'll see what I mean just in a few days from now. Just turn it on right now, and you'll like, it'll do wonders for you. It'll break the association between the stimulation of TikTok and the reward that it gets you, the dopamine, and sort of like your brain's association with that. So it's hugely powerful. And then also another thing you can do is to disable raise to wake. So if you grab your phone right now and you just grab it like this, just hold it like this, doesn't open up, doesn't light up. If it does, that's something that you want to turn off, and you can turn off. It's called raise to wake. And the thing is, if you turn that shit off, it's obviously going to be a small thing, right? But if you turn it off every time you grab your phone, you're going to be that much less likely to actually open it and stop scrolling, and you'll be that much more likely to get a thought of, wait, I just grabbed my phone mindlessly, I shouldn't be doing this, which obviously comes with meditation. And so we want to do this, like, you want to disable raise to wake, and also another thing called tap to wake. So if you tap your phone right now, it shouldn't light up. You should have to manually press the power button in order to open it, because that's going to add intentionality, and like, it's going to make you have to be intentional with your consumption. So it's like, it's a super small thing. Obviously you can still obviously get past it, but it just builds upon this premise that we are not, like, you don't scroll on your phone consciously. It's not a conscious decision. It is a mindless decision. You don't decide that you're going to scroll because you know it's bad for you. You do it because you're just in this low frequency state. And if we can add more friction between you grabbing your phone and your brain's association with it, that's going to do wonders. So disable raise to wake and tap to wake. Now you also want to disable notifications. So you go into your phone, you search for notifications, you disable it for all apps. Like, how fucking ridiculous is it that all these apps can contact you when it's convenient for them? You are allowing them to steal your attention, your time whenever they want it. Like, are you a fucking imbecile or not? Like, I see all these retard ass idiots in my school, in my class, with their fucking notifications on, with a snapshot, the little gay ass sound as well. I see all that shit, and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you, man? What the fuck is wrong with you? How little self respect must you have to have notifications on your phone like that? Like, it's I can't believe that people still have that shit, right? It's this social fear that, oh, what if I don't reply in time? Like, all that gay shit is just haram, right? So disable your notifications. Like, how the fuck can you allow TikTok to grab your attention, to basically let them tell you, hey bro, look at this, go onto our app, waste your time whenever they want you to do that? Like, how fucking ridiculous is that? So disable your notifications on your phone for every single app. I'm talking about WhatsApp as well, messages as well. And on top of that, you also want to enable do not disturb. So basically that way nobody can call you, because when people call you all the time and you get messages from people, what happens is that you're just more likely to go on your phone. So if we can decrease the amount of time that you go on your phone by 20 or 30%, because you don't get calls or messages from people all the time, and you just wait with replying to them, right? That's going to decrease your TikTok consumption a lot, which is going to be hugely powerful. And if you think that you have to be in, like, available to people, to your parents, for example, to your friends or some shit, like, if it is an if it's an actual emergency, they can call 911. If it's not an emergency, they don't need to call you. That's just how it is. And sure, like, I'm not telling you to sever your fucking contact with your parents or something. Obviously, go in and check your messages a few times a day if you want to. That's what I do. But don't go on it like a fucking little monkey, just being distracted like this all the time because you get phone calls or whatever. The big premise with this is that you don't want to allow, like, your phone to grab your attention whenever it feels like. You want to build this moat around you. You know, in Minecraft, when you have your castle or your house, and then you build like a lava moat around it. You want to have your own moat, your own moat, your own walls, your own castle, your own fortress around your attention, so that it's not just stolen by people. That's a huge thing. disable notifications, enable do not disturb, and then also you can enable silent. It just adds a little bit to it as well. So you press the little button, you toggle the button on the side of your phone. You're just gonna remove all the fucking sounds, that kind of stuff. And then also what I do a lot is I just enable airplane mode as well. Literally airplane mode. So nothing can come through to my phone, bro. Nothing can come through to my phone. Like for example, I'm recording this video with my phone. How absolutely insane would it be for me to not have airplane mode on and to allow other people to contact me while I'm doing this big important task, right? How like I can't believe that people are living like this, man. How can you allow this thing that you should use with intentionality for positives as a tool to achieve your goals, right? How can you use that as a fucking, like, how can you let it use you instead of you using it, right? So grayscale, raise to wake, tap to wake, no, disable notifications, do not disturb, silent, all this stuff, and airplane mode as well. Have it on. You don't have to have airplane mode all the time. I'm not saying that, but what I do is that because then you won't be able to use your phone with Wi-Fi and anything like that, right? Or I don't think so, at least. But basically, you can disable airplane mode whenever you want, and then put it back on. That's what I do, right? And sometimes, sure, when I'm commuting to school, for example, I'm fine with my parents calling me. I'll have airplane mode disabled because I'm not gonna be doing something very productive on the fucking commute, and so I'm fine with my parents being able to contact me during that time. But that is intentionality. That it like start using technology, start using your phone, not on accident by fucking grabbing your phone or getting a notification, and then grabbing your phone and then opening TikTok and start and scroll and waste your fucking life, right? Use it with intentionality. Don't use it on accident. Use it on purpose. And then probably the biggest one of these is just to delete the TikTok app. Like, how the fuck can you have your TikTok app on your phone if you're wasting hours on it? I get it. You delete it and then you re-download it, right? And I get that, right? You when you get into these mini ruts, you re-download it because you think to yourself, well, this is kind of stupid anyway. I wanna check that bit on TikTok or some shit like that, some bullshit, right? But like, don't fucking have it on your phone, man. Even if you think that you need to stay in contact with people, if you communicate with people through TikTok, you don't need that shit. Get the fuck away from that app. Like, you've wasted so much time already on it. Like, don't have it on your fucking phone. Delete it right now. And sure, this is not going to be a one-time fix, obviously, because you're most likely going to re-download it again if you fall into these mini ruts. But it's just like, I have to mention it in this part of the guide. Like, you cannot have TikTok on your phone. That is a fucking haram app. It is designed to take your fucking attention, to take your life, to sexualize your brain, to fuck up your attention span, to fuck up your dopamine levels, all that shit, right? And so delete the app if you haven't already. It's just a like, if you have any social obligations on there, just fucking get over yourself, man. Just get over yourself. If they're truly your friend and you need to contact them, have fucking WhatsApp or some shit like that. Like, you don't need memes, like sending memes with motherfuckers from your school, some shit like that. It's all gay. It's all haram. So stop doing that shit immediately and delete TikTok. Now the last thing is to just add something called a screen time widget onto your home screen on your phone. So you can go onto your home screen on your phone, hold the home screen, press the little plus thing in the left corner, and then you can search for screen time and add a widget. So what will happen is that it'll show up on your home screen how much time you've spent on your phone today, and it'll just add some gamification, some accountability. It's just not a huge thing, obviously, because you can still, like, it's not a one-time fix, but it'll so- it'll add some friction to you keep using your phone because it gives you the score that you want to beat, your high score or your low score rather, and it reminds you. Because the thing is, what gets measured gets managed, and the more you have it in your face, like how much you're consuming, how much time you're wasting, the less you're gonna want to do it. That's just how it works. You can probably get why. And so you can add a screen time widget on your phone. It's super easy to do. It takes fucking 30 seconds. So those are the big main things that we can do to improve our digital environment and set ourselves up for success. And what I'll do is that I'll leave a link to my NoScroll phone checklist in the description. So it's just another document that you can open up and see. Like, you have this checklist with all these steps. If you found it overwhelming or whatever, you can go in there and see why you should do it and how like exactly step by step. Fucking click this button, and you'll have it on. Just you can go into the description of this video and see the NoScroll phone checklist and see the document and see the checklist and make sure you've got them all in so that you can just do that as well. Because I'm a nice man, I'm gonna give you that for free as well, so you can just check it right now. Now, the next big way in which we can set up our environment for success in terms of quitting scrolling on TikTok is your physical environment. So you want to make it as obvious as possible to not scroll on TikTok. So, for example, when you're waking up in the morning, you don't want to have your phone within arm's reach. Why? Because it'll be a lot easier to grab it because there's no friction. If you have to stand up and go get it, it'll add that more friction to it, right? And so it's gonna be a small thing. It's not gonna be a one-time fix. For example, not keeping your phone in your pocket when you're walking. You instead you want to keep it in your backpack. For example, that's what I do. And and by the way, this is a complete side note, but I just have to mention it to you because I think you're gonna find it valuable. Keeping your phone in your pocket, like your on your pants, next to your balls, with all the radiation, with all the Wi-Fi, 4G, Bluetooth that comes out of your phone that like connects to the satellites in the space and everything. That's actually super harmful for your balls, and it makes you more like basically infertile, and it fucks up your testosterone, your sperm. It can actually hurt your ability to have children in the future. So just that's just a complete side note, but it ties into the fact that we should not be having our phones in our pockets because one, they're so easily accessible and you can just grab it whenever you want and start scrolling, right? There's no friction to it. But then also just because it's a complete side note, wasn't planning to mention it in this video, but I just want to do it. It fucks up your sperm and your testosterone, so it's just a free testosterone boost you can get. Like just don't keep your phone next to your balls in your pocket. And if you absolutely have to, keep it on airplane mode because it'll block out most but not all of the radiation. So preferably just keep it in your backpack or in your bag. But I just want to plant the seed in your mind of this sort of phone in your pocket infertility testosterone crisis thing. Maybe I'll go into more depth in some future video, but we'll see. Don't keep your phone in your pocket or like just within arm's reach because it'll be easy to grab it that way. So you want to keep it in your backpack or in your whatever. Even if you're in school, for example, you can keep it in your locker if you want to as well. You can if you're working in your room at home, you're working on your business or you're studying, you can keep it on the other side of the room or even in another room, for example, just to make it less obvious because we want to break the association between the easy quick reward and TikTok, right? That's because that's the thing that's been built up in our mind, or like that's what our brains has started associating TikTok with. It's so easy to grab the phone, you can start scrolling immediately, and you get all this reward, you get all this feeling of social interaction and that you're learning stuff for no cost. But if you have to walk to the other side of your house, for example, you have to go downstairs and go into some fucking some other room, it'll be a lot easier for you to resist because there'll be a lot more friction to you actually doing it. So it's just a minor but powerful thing that you can implement. And all these tactics themselves aren't that big, but they in conjunction in like when you put them all together, they make a huge difference, right? So that's just the mindset that I want you to have towards all these small little tactics, little tools that we use here. And then also another thing that you can do when it comes to your physical environment is just to avoid the places in which you normally scroll. So if you have your fucking armchair at home, for example, where you sit down, you eat your food when you come home from school and you just start scrolling, or for example in bed in the morning or in the evening, just spend less time in those places. Find other ways to not be in those places. For example, you might want to consider not being at home as much. You might not want to be in this sort of your fucking smelly room or some shit at home, and because you have basically built up an association between scrolling and wasting time and that room through so many hours of doing that in the past. So you might, for example, want to stay at the gym for longer. You might want to go to the library instead of going home immediately. You might want to be being out in nature more. That's literally one of the perfect environments for this, right? Because you are not going to associate nature like this environment with scrolling on TikTok, right? So that's just another thing you can do. It's similar to the critical time window thing, but you can think to yourself, what are the environments in which I usually scroll the most, and how can I avoid them? How can I reorganize them if I have to be in there? For example, you could just reorganize your room, which will also be sort of aligned with this self-image thing that we covered earlier. Fuck, that we covered earlier, and it'll be one small thing that just it it breaks the association between TikTok and this reward and the version of you that does that, if that makes sense, right? So you can, for example, rearrange your room to make it to sort of just shed skins to have this new version of yourself, to have this new chapter of your life when you're not going to be wasting time on TikTok. And the more you implement these steps, the less your brain is going to associate TikTok with the reward, and so you're not going to be grabbing your phone as frequently mindlessly, right? So that's kind of the idea with all this stuff. You can make sure that you're not spending a lot of times in the places in which you're most likely to scroll. Now, the third big thing we can do to set up our environment for success is to set up our social environment. So there are a few ways that the people in your life can impact your scrolling habits on TikTok. So basically, there are two ones. So the first one is that they actively encourage you to scroll. So they might, for example, fucking tell you, bro, don't you have TikTok on your phone? Oh, man, you're weird or some shit like that, right? They could be gay as fuck and talk like that, right? But probably more realistically, the people in your life, your social circle, they are going to encourage you to keep scrolling TikTok passively through them doing it first of all, but then also accepting you doing it. So I want you just to imagine if you were living with, for example, 5 monks and in a house, for example, for a week, and none of them were scrolling. They were meditating for hours a day, being out in nature for hours a day, just detached from technology. If you had to spend all your day with them, would you be more likely to scroll or not than with your current social circle? Probably less, right? Because the people would just accept it more. It wouldn't fit the culture, it wouldn't fit the vibe. If all your friends are at a fucking, you're sitting down, you're scrolling on your phones, it's gonna be a lot easier to do that if like than if you were just by yourself, if that makes sense. Because we are obviously social animals, and this ties into the big socialization aspect that we covered earlier. The more time you spend with people that share this kind of mindset, the less you'll do the activities that contradict them. So just think to yourself in your life, like, what people are actually what people do I actually want to spend my time with? What people are not my people, and I just spend time with them because I feel lonely? For example, in school, I had a big social circle in ninth grade. I had like 20 friends in school and shit, but they were kind of shallow, and I didn't really want to they weren't really my people, and eventually I outgrew them, of course, right? And so you don't want to be spending time with people that accept this version of you. It's the same thing, like it's the self identity thing as well, or self image. Like you don't want to spend time with people who accept you as the version of you who's scrolling on TikTok. Like, for example, if you can just apply, for example, what you think my decision making calculus would be onto your decisions, you would probably scroll less, right? And so if you like, bro, stop spending time with people that accept you being a bitch, basically, being complacent, and that are complacent themselves, and add the ambitious people into your life. As I mentioned earlier, I think it is better to have a parasocial circle than it is to have a negative physical social circle. So basically, find the people online that you resonate the most with and consume their content instead of being with your gay ass little video game or whatever degenerate friends is going to be a lot better. Obviously not, that's not the end point that we want to aim for. Like an internet relationship is a fucking like nowhere near the standard that we want to get to, of course, within our relationships. But it'll be a lot more effective for you to just spend the time basically with people online that share the mindset you want to have and are people that you respect, than it is going to be for you to be spending time with people in your real life that don't have that mindset, right? At least that's how I've done it. Like when I started on the self improvement journey and I was trying to quit TikTok, for example, I I consumed so much content, honestly, so much long form educational content, podcasts, books, talking head videos, and I'm super grateful for that. I'm super grateful that I did that instead of spending time with retards in my school. And I'm not saying this just for you because I want you to keep fucking consuming my content, but like you will genuinely have a better outcome in this domain in quitting TikTok if you just spend the time with people that are like that don't tolerate a version of you, that have a different mindset. It's just how human beings are wired. We are like, what are they called? Little dishwasher things, sponges. That's right. We're like sponges. We absorb the energy and sort of the mindset that our environment has, and specifically our or particularly our mates, like our tribe mates, our clan mates, like the caveman. Like, bro, if you were a caveman back in the old days, and you were in your tribe, and a certain mindset in your tribe was accepted and another was frowned upon, which one would you be the most likely to follow? Probably the one that's being accepted. Why? Because you want to be accepted by the tribe. So if you just think to yourself, like, do I want to be like these people? Do I want to have the habits of these people? Do I want to do these people embody the values that I want to embody, right? Do these people scroll on TikTok? Like, if motherfuckers in your social circle are wasting time on TikTok every single day, and you tell them to stop, and they don't see anything wrong with it, and they look at you like you're weird for not doing it, fucking cut them out immediately. And there are two ways to do that: the upfront way and the overtime way, or like the whatever you want to call it, the slower way. So the upfront way, it requires more balls, it requires more confidence, but it is the faster and sort of more honorable thing to do. You speak with them in person or over a call, and you're like, I like I want to this like I owe you guys the respect to tell you that I'm on this new path, and I don't think you guys want to do it as well, and I want to distance myself from this relationship or this friend group. Right? You can do that, and it's I've never done that really. I have digitally done that. I have removed three guys from my group chat with, like, I had me, my big brother, and our friend had a group chat with some other guys that were on the self improvement path, and we were talking about the grind and masculinity and whatever discipline, these habits, and I just removed three of the guys because they didn't like wouldn't meet the standards of the clan. Like they wouldn't do the things that we decided that, like, they just wouldn't take action on the stuff that we talked about, and they weren't as serious as us, and so I just removed them as the head of the clan, as the admin of the WhatsApp group chat. I just removed them, right? So I just did that, and then I um, talked to them over text as well, and I just told them straight up, like, you don't meet the standard of the clan. So if your goals don't seem to be alignment with the clans, and if they are in the future, you can hit us back up, right? But basically, you can do it the upfront way like that, or just even more big balls way. You can just tell them upfront, but it's gonna be like it's gonna require confidence, right? Because it's I've never done it, but it's probably like I can imagine it being a pretty cringy situation to be in. But if you've got the balls and like that, like if you've got the balls to do that shit, then you'll get like definitely some of my respect. And so you can do that if you feel capable. If you don't want to do that, I understand that. Um, it is the more pussy way to do it over time, but it is effective as well. Like it takes longer, but it does work as well. So you basically just ghost them. You distance yourself over time from these people. You stop engaging in conversations, stop engaging in activities with them, and so like it'll take you probably a couple of months to do that, to distance yourself completely and to sort of cut the ties with them and the version of you that was friends with them. And so if you can, for example, move, or if you, like, for example, with me, when I changed schools from my sort of middle school in ninth grade to high school in 10th grade, the education system is a bit particular here in Sweden, but basically I changed schools, and then I had no reason to be seeing my previous friend group, and so that was kind of how it was for me. I just distanced myself over time. I've had multiple friend groups, so some of them I did upfront this sort of group chat thing with, and some others I just did over time, right? And so like the best thing it would be for you to just move to a new environment completely if you have no one in your life right now, because the chances are you might not have anyone on this path in your life that actually want to keep you at the standard that you want to keep yourself at, or even a higher standard, right? And so it's going to be tough, but eventually in the future, if you take the right steps, you're going to find the people that you are truly meant to be with. And so it might be tough in the beginning, but quitting TikTok, like when you are, your social circle is going to determine so much, man. So I don't want you to underestimate this stuff. I don't want you to just engage in gay little chit chats with people here and there. Continue to have Snapchat on your phone and send these gay ass little pictures to your friends and shit like that. If they are not on your level, on your wavelength, on your frequency, don't spend time with them. It is better to be alone than it is to be with people who are not your people. And so if you want a tactical action step, like, this is gonna sound pretty sleazy because I'm a content creator, but basically, what I did was I excessively consumed a long form educational content and learned. and embrace the values and the sort of opinions and the beliefs from the people that I was watching that I respected, that I wanted to be more like. And so that's what I did. You can find out what works for you. Basically, like, if you don't have any people in your life, or sorry, if you don't have any people in your life that are on this wavelength, it's going to be pretty effective to just find those people online and have a sort of parasocial internet relationships with them. And obviously you can go into online communities and things like that, right? Things of that nature. But the big thing is, distance yourself from the people in your, like, in your life that keep you at the standard, or don't keep you at the standard that you want to be at, because you're going to be so much more likely to keep scrolling if you are that person. If every time you spend time with them they reinforce that self-image of you, right? They tell you, oh no bro, you know who you are, or some shit, like they tell you that, nah bro, you're this way, or like, just the way in which they behave towards you will be, they will reinforce a certain version of you, right? This is some deep psychological shit, but basically, your friends will reinforce the version of you that they like the most, which is probably going to be the current you, because the next version of you that you want to become, they're not going to like as much, because it's going to be different from the one that you are right now, and it's going to be like different in a negative way for them, because your friends aren't on the same path as you are, probably, right? And so distance yourself from these people, and find, if you can, find replacements either online, or obviously the better way would be to be doing it in real life. So that's really how to do it. And so those are the 4 steps to stop scrolling on TikTok as a teenager: the primal reset, the primal habits, the implementation system, and the environment setup. We'll cover all of it. And if you just follow what is in this guide, you will quit, like, you will stop scrolling on TikTok. That is what will happen. And so you'll save so much time. For me personally, I've saved hundreds of hours since I've quit, and I put that into martial arts primarily. And I've had 3 kickboxing fights. Sure, I lost one of them, but the point system was fucking, like, I'm not gonna make excuses, but basically the point system was fucked up. By no means did he dominate me. Probably the other way around. But basically, I've had 3 kickboxing fights. I've learned so much from that, and that was just an example. That's just an example of how I've used the time that I've gained back from scrolling TikTok to something productive, right? So, and with the time that you gain back, you get to choose what you want to do, and that's what's so beautiful, right? You get to choose what character you want to build in the game of life, right? So, it's beautiful, man. So I'm currently building NoScroll protocol. It's a huge, massive program covering all the detailed steps, like all the specific action steps, how to actually implement all of these steps that we covered in this video, in this full guide. And I'm making the program right now. And if you want to lock in a 50% discount while I'm making it on the pre-sale, you can check out the link in the description. NoScroll protocol. It's the top link in the description. Check it out right now, and I'll catch you in the next one, bro. See you.